Hey guys, tonight we're drifting into one of the strangest, most suspiciously well-manicured corners of American history. The birth of the suburb. Not the cute pastel-coloured sitcom suburb, I mean the real one. The one built on conformity, fear, debt, picket fences sharp enough to double as weapons, and a homeowners association that could make a medieval bishop feel underpowered. Before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And thank you for suggesting this topic, it was such a fun one to explore. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is, because for some mysterious reason, it's always 2:13 AM for someone. Now dim the lights, put on a fan for that crispy white noise, and get comfortable. Maybe tuck your feet in case your HOA suddenly materializes to scold you for having non-compliant ankles. But pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what suburb life actually felt like when it first crawled out of the post-war soil? What was it like being handed a 30-year mortgage that was basically a life sentence with better landscaping? Did people really mow their lawns 3 times a week, or was that just peer pressure wrapped in freshly cut grass? Did dads genuinely enjoy edging sidewalks at 7 AM on Saturdays, or were they trying desperately to drown out the crushing existential dread? Why did every house look exactly the same? Was it architectural cohesion, or a government-issued personality clone? And how many casseroles can one neighbourhood produce before someone snaps? And now congratulations, you've just woken up in the American suburbs circa 1954. You're wearing a pair of slacks you didn't choose, you smell faintly of Sears appliances, and somewhere down the block someone is already judging your lawn height. Good luck. You step outside and realise your house looks exactly like every other house on the block. Same roofline, same pastel siding, same aggressively enthusiastic shutters. It's like living inside a copy machine. Developers promised this was the future, but you can't shake the feeling you've wandered into a polite architectural cult. Let's talk about how you got here, because you didn't just buy a house. You bought an entire identity package that came pre-installed with matching curtains and an approved list of acceptable head shapes. You were told this was the American dream, wrapped in vinyl siding and optimism, a place to raise a family, mow a lawn, barbecue on weekends, and definitely not question why the neighbours' floor plans look suspiciously identical to yours. This whole development was assembled faster than you can toast white bread, thanks to post-war construction methods that essentially turned carpentry into an assembly line. Every home is a clone, each one slapped together by teams working with the speed and enthusiasm of people desperate to clock out before sunset. Let's step inside for a moment. Your living room smells faintly of fresh paint, new carpeting, and a hint of existential obligation. The furniture arrives from the department store already arranged in your imagination. A floral patterned sofa, an aggressively square lamp, maybe a ceramic ashtray shaped like a seashell, because everyone smokes and interior decor refuses to acknowledge health hazards. You're standing in what is supposed to be your forever home. But everything echoes because the walls are thin, the ceiling's low, and your sense of individuality has been filed gently away like paperwork at a bank. Now take a walk to the backyard. The grass is too perfect, too green, as if grown in a laboratory under strict moral supervision. You aren't allowed to change it. Not really. Seed blends are regulated so the lawns stay uniform like a leafy army sworn to uphold suburban aesthetics. You notice every yard has the same fence height, same patio slab, same tiny strip of garden where you'll someday plant tomatoes that absolutely will not survive because the soil is 90% construction debris. And across the way, your neighbour waves with the enthusiastic exhaustion of someone who spent all morning pretending to enjoy edging the walkway. Let's be honest, you're still trying to convince yourself you love this place. Everyone else seems thrilled. But you've started realising that suburbia is less a collection of homes and more of a performance. You're expected to smile, mow, wave, water, and live quietly within the approved boundaries of pleasantness. You can't paint your door red without triggering a neighbourhood tribunal. You can't install a swing set unless it aligns with the local feng shui or whatever rules Carl from the Homeowners Association pretends to understand. And at night, when things get quiet, you start noticing something strange. All the houses glow the same warm yellow through the same wide picture windows. All the televisions flicker at the same time, tuned to the same family sitcoms that gently reinforce the life you're supposed to be living. Even the sounds are uniform, distant laughter, clinking dishes, the soft hiss of sprinklers flipping on in synchronized intervals, because water conservation is less important than curb appeal. You try to reassure yourself that this is stability, not monotony. Progress, not repetition. But then you wander down the street and turn a corner, only to discover another row of identical homes stretching out like wallpaper. You realize you could get lost in your own neighborhood if not for the mailbox numbers, and even those match the font guidelines. By the time you walk back to your house, your perfectly adequate, perfectly average, perfectly copy-pasted house, you feel a strange mixture of pride and faint existential unease. This is your castle, your domain, your slice of heaven shaped suspiciously like everyone else's slice of heaven. And deep down you can't help thinking, if the American dream comes in only one floor plan, what does that say about the dream? Your mortgage paperwork is thicker than the Bible, and you understand roughly none of it. All you know is you'll be paying it until retirement or death, whichever comes first. But everyone acts like this is normal, so you smile and sign like a brave little adult. Let's sit with that moment for a second, the day you committed to a 30-year relationship with a financial document. You didn't quite choose it, it chose you. You walked into the bank excited about home ownership, and walked out carrying a stack of papers so tall it could double as a coffee table. The loan officer smiled reassuringly, the way a dentist does before starting a root canal. He used words like amortization schedule, escrow, and points. And you nodded politely, even though your brain had quietly exited your skull to lie face down in a nearby potted plant. Let's talk about signing those papers, because no one really prepares you for the strange psychological experience of initialing 57 tiny lines while pretending not to panic. Every page describes a new scenario in which you owe the bank money, and every scenario sounds more dramatic than the last. Miss one payment? Trouble. Miss two? Doom. Miss three? They take your house, your dignity, and possibly your future unborn children, though the fine print was unclear. Yet the loan officer just kept sliding pages toward you like a blackjack dealer dealing emotional damage. And the pen, it's weighted, heavy, intentional. It's designed to make you feel responsible and adult-like, even though your internal monologue at that moment is something like, I really hope I remembered to move the laundry into the dryer. Now let's transition to what happens once you've signed your life away. You walk into your new home feeling triumphant, only to realize the house doesn't actually belong to you. Not fully. You're essentially renting it from the bank, but with more emotional attachment and slightly better snacks. The bank technically owns your living room, your dishwasher, your basement, and the wall where you'll eventually hang family photos. You're allowed to borrow all of it as long as you promise to send the bank a monthly donation large enough to feed a small kingdom. You try to relax into your role as a homeowner, but the mortgage haunts you like a polite but persistent ghost. It sits in the back of your mind during birthday parties, barbecues, casual dinners, and every time you buy anything frivolous. Thinking of getting a milkshake? Sure, but that's 12% of your electric bill. Want to take the kids on a weekend trip? Lovely, but remember, the bank is watching, and it knows exactly how much money you make. It always knows. Then there's the moment you discover interest. You sit down one evening with your monthly statement and notice that after paying what feels like half your soul to the bank, your principal has gone down by roughly $5. Congratulations. You've entered the slowest moving financial drama in American history. You'll pay the bank 3 times the value of the house, and the bank will reward you by sending you cheerful reminder letters that say things like, "We're here to help," in a tone that feels gently threatening. And let's not forget taxes and insurance, the mortgage's mischievous sidekicks. Property taxes sneak up annually like a raccoon rattling your trash cans at midnight. Home insurance shows up whenever something breaks, gently reminding you that while you are covered, you are not covered. There's always a deductible, there's always fine print, there's always one clause that says storm damage is only covered if the storm politely asks permission first. Still, despite the stress, the confusion, and the fact that your mortgage book is basically a choose-your-own adventure where all endings lead to debt, there's something weirdly comforting about it. It anchors you, it roots you, it hands you a tiny slice of the American dream, even if the bank technically owns the crust. And as you lie in bed at night, listening to the soft hum of your home settling, you think, this is mine, sort of, mostly, eventually. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to help you drift towards sleep, wrapped in the strangely cozy embrace of long-term financial obligation. You meet a man named Carl. Carl is the HOA president. Carl has a clipboard. Carl has opinions. And within 30 seconds he is explaining shrubbery regulations with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. Let's take a closer look at Carl, because every suburb has a Carl. He materializes out of thin air the moment you unload your moving boxes, like a summoned bureaucratic spirit whose true power comes from bylaws nobody has read. Carl's polo shirt is tucked into khakis so tightly it could qualify as structural support. His glasses reflect the afternoon sun and your future stress. And that clipboard, it's not just a clipboard, it's a weaponized packet of rules designed to make sure no one expresses a personality within a 3-mile radius. Carl begins by complimenting your home, but don't be fooled. This is merely the opening act of the HOA indoctrination ritual. He quickly transitions into reviewing the sacred suburban commandments. Thou shalt mow every 7 days. Thou shalt not paint thy door any colour that disrupts the harmony of the block. Thou shalt not leave trash cans visible for more than 19 minutes. He recites these with the breathless devotion of someone who has spent too long inhaling lawn fertilizer. Let's follow Carl as he gives you your first tour of the neighbourhood. Carl walks with the stiff, oddly triumphant gait of someone who believes he single-handedly prevents society from crumbling. He gestures to each house like a museum docent. See those shutters, he says. Regulation forest green. He beams with pride. You nod, afraid to ask why the exact shade matters. See that fence, he adds? Exact height, 42 inches. No more, no less. You begin to feel like you're living in a giant diorama for an anthropology exhibit titled Conformity, the early suburban era. Carl stops suddenly. He bends down and plucks a dandelion from your lawn using the slow, pained motion of a man performing major surgery. He presents it to you as if it's contraband. These, he whispers, are not allowed. You blink. It's a flower, a cheerful splash of yellow life. But to Carl, it's an act of rebellion. You half expect him to pull out zip ties and arrest the dandelion. Now Carl segues into his favourite topic, infractions. He describes them with a dramatic flair reserved for historical reenactments. Someone once painted their mailbox too glossy. Another resident had decorative gnomes, plural. One homeowner let their lawn exceed 3 inches for 2 days. Carl pauses here, allowing the horror to sink in. His voice lowers. We had no choice, he says. We had to send a letter. You picture a villager being dragged to the town square, except instead of torches and pitchforks, it's retirees holding manila envelopes. Let's talk about your internal reaction. At first, you laugh internally. Surely these rules can't be real. But then you look around, really look. Every lawn is identical, every flower bed perfectly symmetrical, as if nature itself has been given a performance review. Even the birds seem to chirp at an appropriate volume. This place runs on order, conformity, and the sheer administrative willpower of Carl. Eventually, Carl tells you about monthly meetings. These occur in a beige community centre where coffee is consumed in alarming quantities, and residents debate hedge placement as though drafting national legislation. You vow never to attend, but you know deep down that someday you'll be dragged there by fate or by a concerned neighbour named Linda. Then, just as quickly as he arrived, Carl concludes the initiation. He hands you a welcome packet, 57 pages of rules, contact numbers, and a helpful diagram labelled shrubbery that is acceptable versus shrubbery that is aggressive. You look up to thank him, but Carl is already halfway down the street, clipboard tucked under his arm, on his way to fight the good fight against someone's slightly jaunty wind chime. And as you close your front door, packet in hand, you feel it. The quiet pressure of suburban order settling gently on your shoulders. You're officially part of the neighbourhood now, whether you wanted to be or not. Your lawn isn't grass. It's a hostage situation. Neighbours inspect it daily. You mow it, water it, edge it, yet somehow it never meets expectations. You begin to suspect the grass is whispering threats at night. Let's take a slow walk out onto that turf, the one you didn't actually choose but are now spiritually and financially bound to. The blades are suspiciously uniform, the shade unnaturally vibrant, like someone handed Mother Nature a Pantone swatchbook labelled Suburban Compliance Green. You kneel to touch it, expecting softness, but the grass meets your hand with the firm, chilly confidence of something that knows it has leverage over you. And, oh, does it? Because this lawn isn't just ground cover, it's a performance. A neighbourhood-wide play in which everyone competes silently, armed only with fertiliser, envy and passive-aggressive compliments. Every morning, the man across the street, the one who enjoys leaf blowers a little too much, stares at your yard from behind his newspaper like a Victorian detective gathering evidence. Next door, someone measures their grass height with what appears to be a ruler. Suburbia does not tolerate botanical anarchy. Let's talk about mowing. You thought mowing would be simple. Push mower, grass shorter, done. But no. Out here, mowing is a ritual, a sacred suburban rite, performed at precisely the socially acceptable hour of Saturday morning at 9 a.m, when the whole street erupts in synchronized landscaping like some chlorophyll-based symphony. You try to join in, but your mower sputters judgmentally, your lines come out crooked, and halfway through you discover that your lawn has mysteriously developed a patch shape like emotional defeat. And then there's edging. Edging, the delicate art of making your lawn look like it was cut by a surgeon with steady hands and low blood pressure. Edging requires tools you didn't know existed. Tools with names like trimmer, edger, and that spinny thing that terrifies you. You try your best. You squint down the sidewalk, positioning yourself like you're about to defuse a bomb. You make a single careful cut and immediately carve out a small trench that looks like a panicked prairie dog made a break for it. Let's transition to watering. Watering should be peaceful, soothing, maybe even meditative. But watering in suburbia is theatre. You stand there with a hose, gently rotating your wrist like a lawn-based ballet dancer, praying the neighbours see how responsible and nurturing you are. You water too little, your grass turns crunchy, too much. The grass becomes a swamp creature. And of course, your sprinkler, whenever you try to automate this nightmare, spins in chaotic circles, hydrating absolutely everything except the lawn. Now let's talk weeds. Oh, weeds. Suburbia's forbidden guests. Dandelions, clover, crabgrass, plants that elsewhere might be considered charming or symbolic of resilience. But here they're botanical felonies. The moment a single yellow dot dares pop up, you feel the HOA's collective gaze tighten like a hawk spotting prey. You rush out with your weeding tool at dawn, whispering apologies to the earth while committing tiny horticultural assassinations. At some point, you start to realise that the lawn isn't simply a patch of grass. It's a scoreboard, a social currency, a public declaration that you are a competent adult with your life together. You're maintaining an image, not just a yard. Every blade is a judgment, every brown spot a character flaw, every molehill a personal attack, and yet you keep going. You mow, clip, water, fertilise, adjust, admire, panic, repeat. Because deep down, in a place your soul doesn't like to talk about, you crave the subtle nod of approval from the neighbour who has perfect diagonal mowing stripes. You want the quiet satisfaction of looking out the window and thinking, yes, I have conquered nature in a 20 by 30 foot rectangle. By evening, when the sun softens and your tools lean tiredly in the garage, you step back to admire your work. You inhale the smell of freshly cut grass, sharp, earthy, oddly nostalgic, and for a fleeting moment, you feel victorious. Until you spotted a weed. Just one, standing proudly, mocking you. And the lawn whispers almost playfully, "See you tomorrow." Whether it's a birth, a funeral, a PTA meeting, or a full lunar eclipse, your household is expected to produce a bubbling casserole dish filled with ingredients of unknown origin. No one questions this. It is suburban law. Let's take a gentle step into your kitchen, where the ritual begins. The oven is preheating to a temperature that feels vaguely spiritual. The air is thick with the scent of condensed soup, melted cheese, and something that might be tuna or chicken or possibly to spare. In suburbia, casseroles are not food. They are cultural currency. You don't make a casserole because you want to. You make a casserole because it is your societal duty, like jury service but with more cream of mushroom involved. Let's talk ingredients. Because no one really knows what goes into a casserole. They simply appear, assembled through instinct rather than recipe. You reach into your pantry and pull out supplies you didn't even realise you owned. Cans with labels faded to a polite beige, noodles shaped like regret, shredded cheese with no discernible expiration date. You stir everything together in a dish that has been passed down through familial lines with the same reverence as royal heirlooms. And the magic of it all? Somehow, no matter what you throw in, it always tastes exactly like every casserole ever made since 1952. Now let's transition to why casseroles are expected of you. In suburbia, a casserole is the ultimate symbol of community, a warm, bubbling reassurance that even if life is complicated, dinner can be simple. Someone had a baby, casserole. Someone sprained an ankle, casserole. Someone's dog looked a little sad, better whip up a casserole. It's the edible equivalent of saying, I care about you, but not enough to make something with fresh vegetables. And then there are the events. Every gathering requires a casserole, even if explicitly told otherwise. The PTA meeting, you show up with a dish that weighs as much as a bowling ball. The neighbourhood barbecue, another casserole, even though everyone secretly hopes this is the year we diversify. The church potluck, you arrive with 2 casserole dishes because Linda always brings 3, and you refuse to lose this silent suburban competition. Let's not ignore the aesthetics. The casserole dish must be covered with foil so tight it could withstand extreme atmospheric pressure. You press it on gently, smoothing the edges like you're tucking a child into bed, then you carry it across the neighbourhood with the care of someone transporting radioactive material. Because the most terrifying suburban scenario is not dropping your casserole, it is showing up without one. Now imagine the moment you arrive at an event. A semicircle of women eyes your casserole with quiet professional judgment. They lift lids, peer into pans, whisper evaluations like mid-century culinary critics. Ah, one murmurs, cream-based, bold. Another nods approvingly at your breadcrumb topping. A third asks if you use the good cheese, the one that only comes out during major holidays and emotional crises. And here's the real twist. After all this labour, most casseroles sit untouched at the buffet table. People serve themselves a spoonful out of courtesy, a ceremonial nibble, before gravitating toward the ham or the deviled eggs. But it doesn't matter. The casserole wasn't meant to be eaten. It was meant to be seen, to signal that your home is functioning, your pantry is stocked, and your identity as a responsible suburban wife remains intact. Later, you'll return home with your dish half full and your soul half drained. You'll wash it out, stack it neatly in the cupboard, and whisper a quiet promise that you'll never make another casserole again. Until, of course, the next invitation arrives. The next baby is born, the next neighbour sneezes, the next lunar event darkens the sky. And once more, you find yourself reaching for that casserole dish because in suburbia, some traditions are unbreakable. Your garage is packed with gadgets and power tools you bought during a brief, optimistic phase. Your neighbour compliments your drill. You nod confidently, praying he won't ask you to identify which one is the drill. Let's step inside this sacred suburban temple, where the air smells faintly of motor oil, stale ambition, and the cardboard boxes you swore you'd break down 6 months ago. Light filters in through a single dusty window, illuminating the holy altar, a pegboard covered in tools whose purpose you absolutely, definitely know in theory. Hammers of various sizes, wrenches shaped like medieval torture instruments, a level you once used to hang a picture frame that still isn't straight. It all sits there, quietly judging you. You remember the day you bought these tools. You'd walked into the hardware store feeling bold, energetic, ready to transform your life with the power of home improvement. You pictured yourself installing shelves, building furniture, maybe even crafting a birdhouse that didn't terrify local wildlife. You loaded your cart with gadgets that promised efficiency, productivity, and a sense of rugged self-reliance. Then you brought them home, arranged them neatly, and never touched most of them again. Let's talk about the power drill, that mysterious device that hums with both potential and mild danger. You hold it awkwardly, as if it might bite. Your neighbour talks casually about torque settings and bit sizes like he's explaining how to make toast. You nod along, silently sorting through your mental drawer of incomplete knowledge. Torque? Is that the spinny part? The clicky part? The part that makes that alarming grinding noise when you hold it wrong? You smile politely, hoping he won't ask you to demonstrate anything. Then there's the toolbox, a heavy red metal box filled with screwdrivers you bought in one giant multi-pack because the store clerk told you, you can never have too many. Turns out, you can. You have 27 Phillips heads and only one flathead, which has vanished into the void where lost household items disappear. You open the toolbox occasionally just to stare at its contents, as if hoping the knowledge of how to use them will seep in through osmosis. It never does. Let's shift to the workbench. Every suburban garage has one. Yours is covered in an assortment of relics, a clamp you've never unclamped, sandpaper that feels philosophical, a measuring tape that retracts with violent enthusiasm, and a half-finished project whose purpose you have completely forgotten. Was it going to be a shelf, a planter, a modern art installation? Only past you knows, and past you is no longer available for comment. Beyond the tools lies the great pile, a towering mound of items you fully intended to deal with. Seasonal decorations, mystery cords, a bike pump for a bike you haven't ridden since the Truman administration, a single glove, a box labelled important that contains nothing important. You tell yourself you'll organise it this weekend. You tell yourself that every weekend. The pile grows. Your garage is also a place of unspoken competition. Your neighbour's garage is a glowing museum of orderliness, with tools hung neatly like surgical instruments. He invites you inside sometimes, and you pretend not to feel inferior while he shows you his laser-guided measuring system and the shelves he built just for fun. Meanwhile, your garage door opens to reveal chaos, and you silently hope it won't inspire a concerned intervention from the HOA. And yet there is comfort here. A kind of quiet suburban poetry in the unfinished projects and dusty ambitions. These tools remind you of your optimism, the part of you that believed you could fix things, build things, make things. They hold the echo of projects imagined, even if never completed. They represent effort, possibility, and the noble suburban ritual of pretending you know what you're doing until you eventually figure it out. So you linger in the garage a few moments longer, brushing your hand over the cool metal of a tool you will absolutely learn to use someday. Maybe, probably not, but it's yours, and in suburbia, that's enough. Your morning drive is 47 minutes of staring into traffic, listening to AM radio, and wondering why every billboard is shouting at you about mattresses. You arrive at work already tired from existing. Let's ease into the driver's seat with you, the vinyl slightly warm from yesterday's sun, the faint scent of old coffee lingering like a tired spirit guide. You turn the key, the engine coughs awake, and before you've even left your driveway, you can already feel the weight of routine settling over your shoulders like a lead-lined cardigan. Somewhere deep inside your soul whispers, "Not again," and yet again it is. As you roll down your street, you perform the first suburban ritual of the day, the wave. You know the one. Not too enthusiastic, not too distant. Just a gentle, resigned acknowledgement that yes, you too are a commuter trapped in the great hamster wheel of adulthood. You merge onto the main road and immediately stop. Completely. You've travelled roughly 1/5 of a mile and are now parked on asphalt disguised as a highway. Let's talk about the traffic. It stretches ahead of you like a shimmering river of misery, punctuated by brake lights that pulse in unison, a kind of automotive heartbeat reminding you that none of us are going anywhere. The people in the cars beside you exist in a parallel universe of disappointment. A man in a suit eats a banana with the grim determination of someone fulfilling a prophecy. A woman applies mascara while giving death glares to the sedan, cutting her off at 3 miles per hour. A child in the back seat of a minivan presses their face to the window, staring at you with the emotionless intensity of a tiny suburban spectre. You turn on the AM radio because that's what commuters do. It's a mix of weather updates, farm reports, and talk show hosts yelling about things no one fully understands. The static crackles as you adjust the dial. Your soundtrack for the next 40 minutes is a soothing blend of faint outrage and grain futures. Next come the billboards. For reasons no suburban planner has ever explained, every single advertisement is mattress-related. Mattresses for sale, mattresses discounted, mattresses that claim to cure back pain, marital dissatisfaction, insomnia, and possibly emotional trauma. You begin to wonder who these mattress moguls are and why they believe commuters are one bad night away from replacing their beds in a fit of existential panic. Let's transition to the highway merge, that daily crucible testing your patience and moral strength. Cars funnel from every direction like a chaotic school of metallic fish. Some drivers signal politely, others merge with the bold recklessness of people who have made peace with the concept of fate. You inch forward, gripping the wheel, whispering a gentle prayer to whichever deity governs turn signals. Once you reach cruising speed, a generous term for 32 miles per hour, your mind drifts. You think about your to-do list. You think about what you'll make for dinner. You think about that weird rattling sound your car makes when turning left but not right. You briefly consider just driving past your exit and leaving your responsibilities behind forever. Moving to a small coastal town where people ride bicycles and say things like, "Take your time," without passive-aggressive undertones. But the exit appears, glowing like a beacon of obligation. You take it. Now you're on the final stretch, the business district. A landscape of beige office buildings surrounded by parking lots vast enough to host medieval battles. You pull in, park crookedly, and decide you'll correct it when you leave, knowing full well you won't. You sit in the quiet misalignment of your parking space and breathe deeply, feeling both relieved and vaguely defeated. The commute has drained you, reshaped you, broken you, and yet somehow prepared you for the day ahead. You step out, straighten your clothes, and walk toward the building where fluorescent lights and lukewarm coffee await. And just as you reach the door, you think the same familiar thought, shared by every commuter since the dawn of highways. I have to do this again tomorrow. You wave to neighbours every morning with the same theatrical energy as a game show host. Inside you're exhausted, but no one here can know that. Suburbia runs on the illusion that everyone is thriving. Let's step into the choreography of your day, because that's what it is. A performance polished through repetition, caffeine, and the subtle social pressure of matching white fences. You open your front door, plaster on a smile that's 40% sincerity and 60% survival instinct, and immediately lock eyes with the neighbour across the street who is also acting like they just won a prize package on daytime television. The two of you wave as if competing for a friendliness award no one will ever give out. You descend the driveway with purposeful energy, even though your soul is still asleep. This is when the second performance begins, loading the kids into the car. You speak in the soft, upbeat tone recommended by parenting magazines and people who don't have children. Meanwhile, inside your brain, you're calculating lunches, schedules, missing shoes, and the mysterious disappearance of every matching sock your household ever owned. Let's talk about breakfast, the great balancing act of suburban mornings. You pour cereal into bowls, nodding encouragingly while mentally preparing for the moment that one child will announce they suddenly hate cereal. You wipe counters, pack lunches, and sign forms you didn't realize existed until 10 minutes ago. It's chaos disguised as order, a domestic magic trick no one claps for. Then comes the driveway goodbye scene, the one meant to show neighbours that your family is wholesome, functional, and definitely not held together by cold coffee and collective denial. You hug your spouse with the stiff awkwardness of people who haven't slept properly since 1954. You kiss the air near your children's foreheads because they dodge you like caffeinated squirrels. You wave until no one is looking and immediately deflate like a forgotten beach ball. Inside, the house falls quiet. Too quiet. It's the sound of expectations humming through the drywall. Suburbia loves a narrative. The cheerful spouse, the well-behaved children, the tidy home, the calm weekday routine. You're supposed to glide effortlessly from one task to the next, like a serene domestic swan, all while hiding the frantic paddling happening beneath the surface. Let's shift to the evening performance. The moment the garage door opens at 5:32 p.m, the production restarts. You greet everyone warmly, even though you're running on emotional fumes. You ask about their day with a voice that could convincingly narrate a meditation app. Meanwhile, the kids reenact their school dramas at full volume. The dog howls for attention, and you wonder when your life turned into a sitcom filmed without laugh tracks. Dinner time is a production in itself. Steam rises from pots like stage fog. You assemble plates with the grace of someone trying to impress invisible judges. Conversation flows with the light, pleasant tone deemed appropriate for wholesome family bonding, even though half of it consists of reminders to stop poking siblings with forks. And then, the pinnacle of the performance, the after-dinner walk. Families spill onto sidewalks for a slow, wholesome loop around the block. You hold hands, smile at neighbours, and pretend you're living in a brochure. Everyone else does the same. You pass each other like actors exchanging lines in a scene titled "The American Dream is Fine, Everything is Fine." But under all this choreography, beneath the practiced routines, the polite waves, the tidy exteriors, there's a gentle, Universal truth humming quietly. Everyone is tired. Everyone is trying. Everyone is hoping no one else notices the cracks in their perfect suburban facade. And maybe that's the most human part of all. Because in the end, your nuclear family performance isn't really about perfection. It's about love, effort, and showing up day after day, even when you'd rather crawl back into bed and hide under the covers until further notice. Your kitchen already contains every shiny chrome invention known to man, yet advertisements insist you need one more, the Turbo Atomic Super Whip Mixer. What does it do? No one knows, but you're pretty sure it will fix your life. Let's take a quiet step into your kitchen, the beating stainless steel heart of suburban consumerism. The counters gleam like they were buffed by overly ambitious angels. The toaster has more knobs than a submarine. The blender could puree a brick, and yet none of it is enough. Not according to the commercials anyway. Every television break is an onslaught of cheerful jingles and aggressively smiling actors, pretending that the right kitchen gadget will finally make dinner, marriage, and your sense of identity all come together perfectly. Take the mixer, for example. You already own a perfectly functional one, sturdy, reliable, able to mix brownie batter without complaint. But then the new Turbo Atomic Super Whip Mixer appears on TV, rotating slowly on a pedestal like a monument to late-stage capitalism. It promises smoother batters, fluffier waffles, and perhaps, if you listen closely enough, the restoration of your youthful optimism. You watch the ad, mesmerized, while a voiceover whispers things like revolutionary whisk dynamics, as if that phrase means anything at all. Let's shift to your neighbours. They are the true accelerant of suburban appliance pressure. One day, Linda casually mentions she bought a state-of-the-art bread maker. The next day, she brings you a loaf so soft it defies the known laws of gluten. By evening, you're standing in your kitchen, staring at your loaf pan, wondering if your homemade bread has been a tragic failure all along. You don't even like baking, yet suddenly it feels like a moral deficiency not to own a bread maker capable of producing artisanal carbohydrates on command. Then there's the refrigerator discourse. Once upon a time, a fridge was simply a cold box. Now it comes with built-in calendars, humidity-controlled crisper drawers, a freezer that automatically defrosts, and a water dispenser that costs more to repair than a minor surgery. Your current fridge works just fine. But then you visit a neighbour who proudly demonstrates how theirs dispenses crushed ice, cubed ice, and a mysterious third option labelled chef's ice. You nod politely, pretending to understand the difference while secretly wondering if your entire kitchen is falling behind technologically. Now let's talk catalogues, those glossy lifestyle pamphlets that arrive in your mailbox promising domestic transcendence. Each page is filled with airbrushed families who seem genuinely exhilarated by the presence of smart toasters and deluxe juicers. You flip through them slowly, absorbing the message that your happiness, your worth, your very ability to host brunch depends on acquiring a waffle iron that can sear your initials into batter. And the thing is, the pressure works. Because suburbs thrive on quiet competition, everyone is trying to keep up, to fit in, to perform success without ever admitting they're performing. When a commercial says your kitchen isn't complete without a titanium-coated soup extractor, part of you believes it. Not because you need it, but because owning it feels like a small victory, a shiny badge that says, I am doing adulthood correctly. Of course, once you buy the new gadget, reality sets in. The Turbo Atomic Super Whip Mixer arrives in a box large enough to house a small goat. You unpack it carefully, marvelling at its chrome finish, its unnecessary number of buttons, its instruction manual thick enough to qualify as literature. You use it once, maybe twice, before it joins the other overachieving appliances in the cabinet of forgotten dreams. Still, there's comfort in knowing it's there, waiting, ready, symbolising hope, potential, and the possibility that one day you'll decide to become a person who actually makes soufflés. Because in suburbia, appliances aren't just machines, they're promises, little chrome-plated assurances that life could be better, easier, more delicious if only you buy just one more thing. You're lured into a living room filled with plastic containers in colours that don't occur in nature. The hostess speaks of burping the seal with a reverence usually reserved for ancient rituals. You applaud politely. Let's settle into that living room, a carpeted arena of pastel enthusiasm and gentle coercion. The coffee table is covered in an elaborate display of Tupperware, each piece stacked like architectural models for a futuristic plastic city. Mint green bowls, salmon pink lids, a mysterious teal container shaped like it could either store leftovers or summon interdimensional beings. Everything gleams under soft lamplight, radiating an energy that whispers, "You will buy something. You don't know what yet, but you will." The hostess Linda, because of course her name is Linda, stands proudly at the front of the room, armed with a rehearsed smile and the kind of sales confidence that can only be forged in the fires of suburban social hierarchy. She taps a container with manicured nails and begins the demonstration. Her voice a soothing melody of phrases like airtight freshness and innovative lid technology, spoken as though she is unveiling the cure for aging. Let's talk about the guests. They sit in a semicircle on floral couches, clutching paper cups of lukewarm punch, trying to look interested while desperately hoping no one asks them to participate. Each woman performs the same expression of supportive enthusiasm, eyebrows raised, lips parted, nodding at intervals that suggest they've been hypnotized by polypropylene. Someone murmurs, "Wow," whenever Linda snaps a lid on with extra flourish. Then Linda demonstrates the burp. She presses the center of the lid, and a soft pop echoes through the room. The guests gasp. One woman clasps her pearls, another whispers, "It really works." Like she's witnessing a minor miracle, you clap along, unsure whether you're applauding the burp, the lid, or the fact that you're still awake. Now let's shift to the sales pitch, the moment the atmosphere transitions from casual gathering to financial ambush. Linda passes around catalogues that weigh as much as small encyclopedias. You flip through glossy pages showing families who apparently store every food item they own in colour-coordinated containers. Even their grapes have matching lids. You begin to feel inadequate about the chaotic state of your own refrigerator, where vegetables wilt silently in plastic bags that have never once locked in freshness. Linda then unveils the hostess exclusive set, a rare, shimmering collection available only tonight, only here, only through the magic of social obligation. The group leans forward. You feel the pressure rising like steam in a microwave. "These," Linda coos, "are perfect for casseroles," the room murmurs approvingly, as if casseroles are the backbone of civilization. And then comes the moment you dread, the participation segment. "Who wants to help me demonstrate the spaghetti containment system?" Linda asks, holding up a noodle-filled bowl with alarming enthusiasm. The room falls silent, eyes shift, shoulders sink. Finally you volunteer out of pure panic, stepping forward as if walking toward your own suburban destiny. You press the lid, burp the seal, and the group erupts in gentle, supportive applause. You are now spiritually bound to purchase something. When the order forms come around, you fill yours out with the resigned acceptance of someone signing a minor treaty. You don't need new storage containers. You barely have room for the ones you already own. But the gravitational pull of the Tupperware party is irresistible. You write your name, select a set that promises to transform your leftovers, and hope this offering appeases the suburban gods. By the time you leave, carrying a glossy brochure and a mild sense of financial disorientation, you realize something important. Tupperware parties are less about storage solutions and more about collective bonding, a ritualized merging of friendship, obligation, and the eternal quest for airtight seals. You step into the quiet night air, relieved yet strangely fulfilled, because in the strange pastel world of suburbia, nothing brings people together quite like the seductive terror of a plastic container that burps. Your neighbours buy a new station wagon. Suddenly you need a new station wagon. Then they repaint their fence. Suddenly your fence looks like a disgrace. So the cycle continues. Let's stroll slowly into the psychological minefield that is suburban comparison culture. A place where no one openly admits to competing, yet everyone participates like it's the Olympics of appearances. It starts innocently enough. One morning you glance out your picture window and notice the Joneses across the street have upgraded their vehicle. It gleams in the sunlight, all chrome and confidence, like a metallic challenge thrown directly at your self-worth. You don't need a car, yours works fine. It starts, it stops, it makes that rattling sound only on Thursdays. But still something inside you whispers, are we falling behind? Soon you're at the dealership just browsing, which is suburban code for I need to feel like my life is still on track. A salesman emerges from the shadows with the predatory grace of a panther. Before you know it, You're test driving something with faux wood panelling and the faint scent of financial regret. You sign paperwork, swallow your panic, and drive home feeling triumphant until you see the Joneses again, casually admiring their new wagon as if they invented the concept. But the station wagon is only phase 1. Phase 2 begins when they repaint their fence. Not a dramatic colour, something subtle, tasteful, annoyingly perfect. You swear their boards look straighter than yours, cleaner, more morally upright. Suddenly, your fence, which you hadn't thought about in 5 years, looks like it was built by a disgruntled raccoon during a windstorm. You tell yourself it's fine. Then you notice 3 more neighbours painting theirs, all nodding approvingly at each other like members of a secret society with very strong opinions about exterior wood staining. And so, you join in. Out comes the paint, the rollers, the drop cloths. After 3 hours, you've aged 10 years. Your back has filed a formal complaint, and the fence looks exactly the same with slightly shinier splinters. But at least you feel like you're still in the running, still a viable contestant in the unspoken pageant of suburban success. Let's talk about lawn ornaments. The Joneses buy a tasteful bird bath. No big deal. Until you realise your yard, in comparison, looks culturally barren. You start researching bird baths, only to discover that there are dozens of varieties, each with a name that sounds like a budget medieval artefact. You choose one, place it lovingly in your yard, and immediately notice that the family 2 doors down has installed a fountain. A fountain? Suddenly your bird bath feels like a sad puddle in a ceramic bowl. This is how it goes. A patio set here, a new garden bed there, a mailbox upgrade, a holiday display that looks suspiciously more coordinated than yours. You're not competing. You insist this repeatedly, but somehow you find yourself buying solar lights at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday, because Janet's walkway looks like a celestial runway, and yours resembles a poorly lit alley. But here's the secret no one mentions. The Joneses are doing the same thing. They saw your freshly painted fence and immediately felt insecure. They noticed your new station wagon and clutched their keys tighter. Their new bird bath. A response to someone else's upgrade. It's an endless loop of mutual insecurity, a polite arms race fought with decor instead of weapons. And yet, there's something almost tender about this ritual. Everyone is trying to belong, trying to impress, trying to feel successful in a world where measuring success is slippery and strange. The truth is, the Joneses aren't your rivals. They're your comrades, your reflections, your fellow soldiers in the great suburban battle for dignity. So you mow the lawn a little straighter. They trim a hedge a little neater. You buy a patio umbrella. They buy a wind chime. Back and forth, forever, like a gentle, absurd dance of shared aspiration. Because in suburbia, keeping up with the Joneses isn't really competition. It's community disguised as comparison. The kids dart into the street, disappear into backyards, or form roving bicycle gangs that strike fear into no one. They return only for food, band-aids, or to ask deeply unsettling philosophical questions at bedtime. Let's take a moment to observe these small suburban creatures in their natural habitat. They travel in packs, loud, sticky, unpredictable. At sunrise, they burst out the front door like caffeinated squirrels escaping captivity. No one knows where they're going, not even them. They follow the wind, the sound of someone else's sprinkler, or the faint rustle of a popsicle wrapper 3 houses away. Their bicycles, all streamers, rust, and questionable braking systems are their chosen vehicles. They pedal furiously in loose, meandering patterns, as if guided by an internal GPS powered solely by chaos. They circle cul-de-sacs like tiny migratory birds, occasionally stopping to perform tricks that would alarm a professional stunt coordinator. You watch them through the window, coffee in hand, whispering a silent prayer to the helmet gods. Let's talk about neighbourhood exploration. Children in suburbia operate with diplomatic immunity. They wander freely into yards, garages, and homes that are technically not theirs, but spiritually part of their territory. They form alliances with other kids based on important criteria, such as who has the best swing set, who owns a dog that doesn't bite, and who is willing to trade a plastic dinosaur for half a cookie. At some point in the afternoon, you will hear the distant sound of conflict, a dramatic negotiation over a ball, a stick, or a clump of mud that has suddenly become valuable. The argument escalates briefly. then dissolves just as quickly when someone suggests racing to the end of the street. Disputes among suburban children are solved not with diplomacy, but with speed. Now let's shift to snack time. Children will not appear for hours until you attempt to rest, sit quietly, or make a phone call. Suddenly they are inside your home, tracking grass across the carpet and asking for food with the intensity of Viking raiders demanding tribute. You hand out snacks, crackers, fruit slices, something called mystery gummies that have been in the pantry since Easter, and they vanish again, leaving crumbs and existential exhaustion in their wake. Of course, there are also the injuries. Not serious ones, just the standard suburban collection of scrapes, bruises, mosquito bites, and mysterious marks that look like they occurred during a squirrel uprising. Band-aids are currency. They do not need them, but they want them. They want the colourful ones. They want them for injuries both real and imagined. You place a band-aid gently on their uninjured elbow and watch their entire personality stabilise. As evening approaches, the children return home like dusty nomads. They carry stories of their adventures, most of which involve falling off something, climbing something, or witnessing something that seemed haunted but wasn't. They eat dinner with the efficiency of tiny vacuum cleaners. Then, just as you think their energy has finally run out, the bedtime questions begin. These questions could cripple a philosopher. Why do we dream? Where does time go when we sleep? Is our house floating in space right now? Do ants have best friends? You answer with the calm, soothing tone of someone attempting to defuse a bomb. The children nod solemnly, satisfied, and shuffle off to bed like small contemplative monks. And then, at last, the house goes quiet. The chaos settles. The toys stop moving. You breathe deeply, grateful for the peace, knowing full well that at sunrise, the suburban free-range energy crisis will resume with explosive enthusiasm. But there's something strangely comforting in their noise, their motion, their boundless curiosity. They are the pulse of the neighbourhood, the laughter in the yards, the wild energy that keeps this tidy, predictable world from falling asleep on itself. Sure, they're exhausting, but they're also the spark that makes suburbia feel alive. The neighbourhood dads gather around a grill like cavemen discovering fire. They poke burgers with tongs, grunt approvingly, and compare charcoal strategies as if discussing global diplomacy. Let's take a slow step into this smoke-scented social ritual, the great suburban barbecue. It begins innocently enough. Someone announces a cookout, and suddenly every man within a 5-house radius emerges from their garage holding a pair of tongs like it's a ceremonial scepter. They wear identical outfits, cargo shorts, white socks pulled dangerously high, and a t-shirt featuring a joke about beer. This is their moment, their arena, their Super Bowl of sizzling meat. The grills themselves stand like metallic altars, gas, charcoal, hybrid, smoker. Each one represents a different theological branch of dad philosophy. A gas grill means efficiency and reliability. A charcoal grill means rugged authenticity and a desire to be seen as outdoorsy, despite spending most of the week in an office. The smoker signifies deep commitment and the willingness to talk about low and slow for an unsettling amount of time. As the gathering begins, the dads circle the grill in a loose formation, communicating through nods, half grunts, and deeply meaningful eyebrow raises. Someone announces, "This one runs at 450 easy," and the others respond with impressed murmurs, as if he just revealed the cure for forgetfulness. Another dad shakes a bag of mesquite chips with reverence. A third leans in close to inspect flame height, muttering something about airflow like he's a medieval alchemist. Let's shift to the preparation of the meat, the sacred centerpiece. Burgers, hot dogs, ribs, chicken thighs, steaks of questionable origin, all laid out on plastic trays decorated with patriotic patterns. The dads season everything with the confidence of men who have watched at least 3 episodes of a cooking show. Salt, pepper, garlic powder, the Holy Trinity. They sprinkle the seasonings from a dramatic height meant to convey dominance, accuracy, and mild arthritis. Once the cooking begins, the dads fully enter their power zone. The tongs become extensions of their souls. They poke, they flip, they rearrange patties for reasons unknown. Occasionally, a dad steps forward to release a single authoritative squirt of lighter fluid, a display of power that must be respected though never questioned. Meanwhile, the mums gather at a picnic table exchanging knowing glances. They've prepared 98% of the food, but allow the men this ritual because it seems to make them feel alive. Let's talk about the smoke. Thick, fragrant, drifting across the lawn like a suburban incense. It clings to clothes, hair, and the very fabric of memory. Children run through it gleefully, coughing dramatically, then immediately going back for more. Someone inevitably says, "Smoke follows beauty," earning a chorus of polite laughs, and one mum rolling her eyes so hard she almost sprained something. And of course there is the great suburban debate. Flipping frequency. One dad insists once is enough. Another swears by constant turning. A third, emboldened by a second beer, attempts to demonstrate a secret flipping technique involving wrist angles and lunar phases. They speak of grill marks with the seriousness of art critics. Finally, the food is done, or at least grilled into a condition that won't cause immediate harm. The dads step back, chests puffed, triumphant in their smoky heroism. They look upon the charred burgers and slightly misshapen hot dogs as though they've carved them by hand from solid oak. Families gather, plates fill, and the meal commences. Children pick the ketchup bottle as if selecting a wand. Someone drops a bun. Someone else asks why the burger tastes kind of like fire. Everyone nods approvingly regardless. And as twilight falls, the dads linger near the grill telling the same stories they told last year. Tales of legendary barbecues, flame mishaps, and the time someone tried to grill fish and was never invited back. Because in suburbia, the barbecue isn't about food, it's about ritual, status, community, and men finding meaning in the ancient primal act of burning meat slightly too long. A tradition as timeless as smoke drifting into a soft suburban evening. News travels faster than sunlight here. Mention something in your house, and somehow Helen across the street knows by morning. Nobody knows how she does it. Some suspect witchcraft. Let's take a quiet stroll into the soft underbelly of suburbia, the invisible web of whispered intel and mysteriously fast-moving information. You don't join this network. You simply wake up one day and realize you're tangled in it, like a fly in a very polite pastel-coloured spiderweb. It starts with something small. You casually mention to your spouse that you're thinking of repainting the living room. The next morning, Helen breezes over with 3 paint swatches she believes capture your energy, even though you have no memory of ever speaking to her about your energy, your living room, or your interior aesthetic as a concept. Helen is the nucleus of the network, a suburban oracle with an uncanny ability to gather intel from sources unknown. Some say she has binoculars. Others insist she has alliances with mail carriers, delivery drivers, and possibly the neighbourhood raccoons. But her true power lies in her hearing. You could sneeze in your basement, and she'd appear on your doorstep with a recommendation for a vitamin supplement just in case. Let's talk about the channels through which gossip travels. First, there's the sidewalk circuit, that informal exchange of secrets passed during evening walks. Someone bends to pick up after their dog, and in that 2-second crouch, they whisper updates that feel like classified documents. Did you hear about the Wilsons' new car? Did you see Janet's lawn ornament situation? Have you noticed that Tom's been taking out the trash wearing sandals? The topics range from major life events to observations so microscopic they border on artistic criticism. Then there's the postal exchange. Packages on porches are studied with the same scrutiny ancient astronomers applied to comets. A large box appears? People speculate. A small padded envelope? People speculate harder. A furniture delivery truck pulls up, and suddenly the entire neighbourhood is pressed against windows like Victorian opera-goers at the premiere of a scandalous play. Let's move to the most powerful vector of all, children. Children are gossip accelerants. They absorb information from parents like little sponges, wring it out at recess, bring home 5 new versions mangled by second-grade interpretation, and redistribute it into the adult population with cheerful inaccuracies. You hear from your kid that someone's dad quit his job to join the circus. 2 hours later, Helen knocks to ask if you've heard about the Hendersons' career pivot. Of course, there are the subtler methods, the long glance over a hedge, the casual question asked while borrowing sugar, the prolonged pause at the mailbox when 2 neighbours simultaneously check post, but pretend they're not waiting for the other to speak first. Gossip isn't simply exchanged. It evolves, mutates, adapts, whispering through fences like a gentle breeze carrying judgment. Now, let's acknowledge the truth. You participate too. Not openly, not proudly. But there's something deliciously human about knowing who repainted their bathroom or who bought canned salmon in bulk. You lean in just a little closer when someone says, Okay, don't tell anyone I told you this. You nod sagely, as if you are above gossip, even as you eagerly absorb every syllable. But for all its absurdity, gossip serves a purpose here. It's the social glue, or maybe the social duct tape, holding the neighbourhood together. It keeps people connected, aware, invested. It transforms a street of strangers into a messy, nosy, supportive web of humanity. Sometimes it stirs trouble, yes, but it also spreads news of babies born, casseroles needed, fences blown down in storms, and who might need an extra hand. And as you close your blinds at night, confident no one saw you eat 3 slices of pie directly from the fridge, you whisper a quiet hope that Helen never discovers that detail. Because in suburbia, gossip is powerful, but Helen is unstoppable. Your life follows a script written by a marketing team in 1952. Men mow lawns, women host luncheons, children remain quiet until spoken to. You follow these rules while quietly questioning your entire existence. Let's ease into your living room, where these invisible rules hum softly in the air like background static from an ancient radio. No one ever reads the script aloud. It simply materializes upon homeownership, delivered spiritually by generations of carefully posed magazine advertisements. You wake up one day and realize you're performing lines you never auditioned for. Take mornings, for example. The man of the house must perform the sacred ritual of briefcase holding, placing it on the counter with a sigh that communicates both responsibility and mild indigestion. Meanwhile, the woman stages breakfast as though preparing a photo shoot for a brand new serial. She smiles through the chaos, not because she enjoys it, but because the script says smiling is part of her character arc. The division of labour is not so much practical as it is ceremonial. The man goes outside to mow the lawn, not because he loves mowing, but because mowing symbolises providing, even when he's simply walking in aimless rectangular patterns while sweating through his socks. If a neighbour sees him pushing the mower, even better. It confirms his place in the suburban hierarchy. Meanwhile, the woman hosts luncheons, quiet affairs involving doilies, gelatin-based salads, and conversations about topics deemed appropriately delicate. These events operate less like meals and more like diplomatic summits, where everyone compliments each other's floral arrangements while suppressing the urge to scream into a throw pillow. Let's talk about chores. Household tasks follow a bizarre split that makes sense only if you've spent too long inhaling floor wax fumes. Men fix things, or pretend to. They stand in front of malfunctioning appliances with a wrench, staring thoughtfully at the problem while doing absolutely nothing. Women, in contrast, are invisible miracle workers who maintain the internal ecosystem. Laundry, dusting, bill organisation, and the mystical ability to locate objects that men swear have vanished into the void. And then there's discipline. Children are expected to be silent, angelic, emotionless decor pieces until a specific adult cues them to speak. They sit at the table like tiny diplomats, hands folded, waiting for permission to exist audibly. Of course, children do not operate this way organically. They wiggle, they shriek, they spill things. They ask questionable questions about the nature of death during dessert. But the script says they must behave, so parents hover like stage managers, shushing their offspring with the urgency of people trying to preserve national security. Let's shift to aesthetics. The gender roles are baked into the furniture. The woman's domain, the kitchen, gleaming chrome appliances, decorative potholders, cookbooks arranged like trophies. The man's domain, the garage, a sanctuary of tools, dust, and unfinished projects that symbolise freedom, masculinity, and the avoidance of interior responsibilities. Even leisure time is scripted. Men gather around the grill or television, performing commentary on sports teams they feel spiritually connected to but know little about. Women gather around coffee tables, discussing everything from casserole strategies to whether Helen's gardenias are thriving or secretly struggling. The children hover nearby, observing these rituals like anthropologists studying an unfamiliar tribe. But here's the quiet, simmering truth. Everyone knows the roles are ridiculous. You feel it when you ask yourself, why am I arranging tiny sandwiches in triangles? Or when you look at the man mowing the lawn and think, does he even enjoy that? Or is he afraid Carl will issue a citation if he stops? The kids sense it too. They ask why dad can't bake cookies or why mum isn't allowed to operate the grill. Their questions pierce the facade like tiny, well-aimed darts, and yet everyone keeps performing, not out of belief, but out of habit, out of a desire to fit the mould handed to them by glossy magazines and smiling TV families who never argued over chores or questioned the nature of their existence. But beneath it all, there's a quiet rebellion brewing, a subtle shift, a whispered acknowledgement that the script makes no sense, and maybe, just maybe, someday someone will finally rewrite it. Until then, you smile, wave, mow, host, and continue performing your oddly outdated role in this pastel-coloured play. Because in Suburbia, the show must go on. Every household has a fallout shelter brochure tucked next to the Betty Crocker cookbook. You practice duck and cover drills while buttering toast. It's all very surreal, but everyone insists it's fine. Let's slip into the eerie calm of mid-century suburbia, where fear doesn't scream, it simmers quietly beneath gingham tablecloths and pastel kitchen appliances. You wake up each morning to the chirping of birds, the hum of your refrigerator, and the distant unspoken possibility that the world might end before lunchtime. Not dramatically, not with cinematic explosions, just quietly, politely, the way suburbia prefers everything. In your home, preparedness literature is treated like another part of the decor. You have a pamphlet explaining radiation exposure resting right beside your recipe for tuna casserole, as if both will be needed with equal urgency. And perhaps they will, no one knows. The brochures are printed in cheerful fonts, possibly to distract from the fact that they describe how to build a bunker in your backyard using materials you absolutely do not own. Let's talk about the drills. At school, children crouch under their desks as if thin wooden planks offer cosmic protection from existential dread. Teachers smile reassuringly while giving instructions clearly written by someone who has never seen a desk or a bomb. At home, you practice the same motions, duck, cover, and pretend the kitchen table is a magical force field. You keep your posture tidy during these drills, because even in imaginary emergencies, suburbia requires good manners. Meanwhile, your living room becomes a battleground between optimism and anxiety. The television assures you everything is fine, right after explaining how many minutes it would take for a missile to reach the West Coast. Newscasters speak in calm, measured tones, while delivering information that makes your inner organs contract like a nervous accordion. You continue dusting your coffee table anyway. Routine is your shield. Let's shift to the architectural changes. Suburban homes sprout basements like mushrooms. Dim, concrete rooms stocked with canned peaches, bottled water, and an emergency radio that no one knows how to use. Some families go further, converting parts of their basements into makeshift fallout shelters. These spaces are decorated with old board games, extra blankets, and enough spam to feed a small encampment. It's unsettling, but also strangely comforting, like preparing for a storm you hope never arrives. And then there's the outdoor decor. Backyard shelters disguised as pleasant gardening structures. Neighbours exchange tips about air filtration systems while discussing rose bushes. Someone hosts a barbecue over a charcoal grill stationed 5 feet from their bunker hatch. You pretend not to notice the juxtaposition of potato salad and existential fear. Let's not forget the cultural influence. Movies about giant radioactive insects suddenly become very popular. Everyone reads articles about survival strategies between recipes for moulded Jell-O desserts. Even your conversations adopt a surreal duality. One moment discussing the PTA bake sale, the next wondering aloud whether your town is strategically significant. Yet through all this tension, suburbia maintains its choreography. People wave politely, mow lawns, trim hedges. The outside world may be teetering, but here the hedges remain properly shaped. Fear is not something you express, something you file away under things to be worried about later. Your emotions become neatly categorized, much like the canned goods in your basement fallout shelter. And here's the strangest part. You get used to it. You develop a sense of cautious normalcy. Life continues in its pastel rhythms. Children still race bicycles through cul-de-sacs. Couples still host dinner parties. You still have to figure out what to make for dinner even while contemplating global catastrophe. Because what else can you do? Anxiety doesn't stop time. It just adds a subtle crackle beneath the surface. So you butter your toast, practice your drills, and keep that brochure tucked beside your cookbooks. Hope and fear blend into a single, quiet, suburban ingredient. Familiar, unsettling, and weirdly manageable. After all, everyone insists it's fine. You patrol the block holding a flashlight and a sense of exaggerated duty. Nothing ever happens, but you stand guard anyway like a suburban Batman with lower stakes. Let's wander into the cool suburban night. The hour when houses glow softly like decorative lanterns, lawns glisten with automatic sprinkler residue, and the only real threat is stepping on a stray roller skate left in a driveway. Yet here you are, flashlight in hand, shoulders squared, scanning the shadows with the vigilance of someone guarding the crown jewels. This is the Neighborhood Watch, a program designed to keep the peace, maintain order, and offer adults an excuse to walk around after dark with a heroic posture. Your patrol route is short, barely half a mile, but you walk it with the gravity of a knight surveying his kingdom. Each cul-de-sac receives your solemn attention. You shine your flashlight into bushes as if expecting to uncover a jewel thief. The bushes, in turn, simply rustle with the unimpressed sigh of a local possum. Let's talk about your gear. You carry exactly one flashlight, slightly heavy, purchased impulsively during a home improvement sale. It has multiple modes you never use, including strobe, eco, and blinding panic mode, which you discovered accidentally and now avoid like a cursed artifact. Your other essential tool is a walkie-talkie that crackles weakly, providing the illusion of communication, while mostly picking up static and one neighbour's TV. The rest of the watch team consists of people who take the job far too seriously, and others who forgot they signed up. There's Gary, who wears a reflective vest, even though it's unnecessary and vaguely concerning. There's Pat, who logs every raccoon sighting in a notebook titled Incidents. And then there's you, quietly wondering how you ended up pacing the neighbourhood at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, instead of lying on the couch with a bowl of ice cream. Let's transition to the false alarms. Every rustle becomes a potential intruder. Every silhouette becomes a threat. You see a suspicious figure near a porch, only to realise it's a decorative statue shaped like a goose wearing seasonal attire. You shine your flashlight into a yard and gasp, until you remember Janet's inflatable flamingos migrate seasonally across her lawn. You consider reporting these sightings, but the embarrassment outweighs the duty. And then there are the nocturnal suburban noises, sprinklers clicking on suddenly like mechanical demons, wind chimes performing haunted lullabies, garage doors creaking open because someone realised they left their wallet in the car. Each sound makes your heart jump, reminding you that suburban peace is serenaded by mildly threatening acoustics. Let's not forget the internal monologue, your greatest enemy. While patrolling, your brain insists on whispering dramatic narratives. What was that shadow? Could that mailbox have moved? Was that the sound of footsteps or just your own digestive system? Fear and imagination hold hands like mischievous children daring you to panic. But the truth is, this whole ritual has a strange, soothing rhythm. The quiet streets, the cool air, the soft glow of porch lights illuminating your path. You walk slower, you breathe deeper. You start to realise that maybe this isn't about danger at all, it's about connection, to the neighbourhood, to the silence, to the version of yourself that remembers what stillness feels like. Eventually you pass the same houses again. Familiar shapes, familiar shadows, familiar plastic flamingos. The neighbourhood sleeps peacefully, blissfully unaware that you, noble, anxious guardian, have been circling like a nervous lighthouse all evening. You feel oddly proud. Nothing happened on your watch, which means, in your mind, you have accomplished a great and heroic thing. And when you finally return home, flashlight lowered, walkie-talkie powered off, you feel a soft calm settle into your bones. Because in suburbia, peace isn't protected by capes or superpowers, just by people like you, wandering under the streetlights, listening to the quiet hum of a world that's safe enough to worry about nothing. He arrives at dawn. He knows your schedule, your dairy consumption, and possibly your deepest fears. You never question it. You simply accept his presence like a character in a mildly unsettling dream. Let's ease into the soft blue hour, when most of suburbia still slumbers beneath quilted bedspreads, and the birds haven't yet decided whether it's worth waking up. The streets are empty, the lawns glisten with dew, and then, faint at first, comes the gentle clinking of glass bottles, a sound so iconic, so oddly comforting, it feels less like a delivery and more like a ritual passed down by ancient dairy priests. The milkman rounds the corner in his truck, a white vehicle that looks suspiciously like it could belong to either a delivery service or a paranormal investigation team. His uniform is crisp. His step is silent. His ability to navigate uneven driveways in near darkness is unnatural. No matter where you live, front porch, back porch, side entryway you didn't know was a designated drop zone, he finds the right spot with eerie precision. Let's talk about his knowledge. Because the milkman doesn't just deliver milk, he delivers insight. He somehow senses when you've run low on butter before you've noticed. He arrives with eggs, exactly when your children have decided to enter their pancake phase. He hands over cream cheese the very week you accidentally bought bagels for the entire neighbourhood. Sometimes you wonder if he keeps notes, a little ledger labelled Household Secrets where he logs mysterious patterns. Family at number 24 returned from vacation, increase milk by 1 bottle. Family at number 12 arguing again, add chocolate milk. Family at number 8 bought a new lawn gnome, possible cry for help, and you never question how he knows these things. You simply nod politely, feeling vaguely exposed, like someone just complimented your diary. Let's shift to his timing. The milkman always arrives precisely when you are least prepared to interact with another human being. You stumble outside in a robe, hair resembling a startled cactus, and there he is, standing serenely on your porch like a dairy-themed guardian angel. He hands you a bottle of milk so cold it could solve diplomatic conflicts. You thank him in a whisper, embarrassed to be witnessed in your pre-coffee state. He nods knowingly, not judgmental, just aware, deeply aware. Despite his mysterious aura, the milkman is the safest person in suburbia. Everyone trusts him instantly. You give him access to your porch, your schedule, your dietary habits. Some homes even leave their empty bottles in decorative crates, a quiet acknowledgement of this strange, intimate exchange. You never lock your milk box. You don't need to. The milkman respects boundaries better than most extended relatives. Now let's consider the milk itself, delivered fresh, neatly capped, and glowing faintly in the morning light like a pastoral treasure. The children squeal when they see it. The dog wags its tail. Even the coffee seems to brew with extra enthusiasm. Starting your day with milkman milk feels like participating in a tradition older than commuting, lawn care, and Tupperware parties combined. But beneath the cosy ritual lies something mildly unsettling. Because sometimes the milkman seems to know things before they happen. On the morning you adopt a cat, he arrives with extra cream. On the morning you forget your umbrella, he politely warns you that it'll be a wet one today, even though the sky's perfectly clear. You laugh it off, but 2 hours later, rain pours from a cloud that meteorologists swear did not exist. And once, only once, you open your door to find not milk, but a single bottle with a handwritten note. Take care of yourself today. You don't ask questions, because the milkman is not a manu question. He's a gentle suburban enigma, part myth, part routine, part benevolent apparition carrying dairy products. And as the sun rises fully, warming the rooftops and stirring the neighbourhood awake, he disappears around the corner, leaving behind only footprints, condensation, and the strange comfort of knowing somebody out there is paying attention. Just not too much attention. Hopefully. Everyone shows up wearing their nicest outfits and their most exhausted smiles. No one remembers the sermon, but everyone remembers who wore what and who brought deviled eggs to the potluck. Let's step into the soft Sunday morning light, where every household performs a weekly ritual that feels part spiritual, part theatrical, and part endurance test. The neighbourhood, normally casual and chaotic, suddenly transforms into a runway of starched collars, freshly ironed dresses, and children bribed with breakfast pastries to behave for at least 90 minutes. You stand in front of the mirror adjusting your outfit, not because the sermon demands it, but because suburban tradition insists that Sunday is the one day everyone pretends to have everything under control. As you walk toward the church, you join a slow-moving parade of families trying to appear serene. The dads wear suits that haven't been washed since the Eisenhower administration. The mums glide like exhausted swans, balancing purses large enough to hold emergency snacks, tissues, crayons, and possibly a small medical kit. The children march along with the solemn energy of diplomats attending peace talks. Everyone smiles, but only with their mouths. The moment you step into the church foyer, the catwalk effect reaches full bloom. Heads turn, eyes scan, compliments float through the air like pastel confetti. Oh, that dress is just darling. Look at you. So handsome today. isn't this weather just a blessing? It's less about piety and more about performing social cohesion, a gentle competitive pastime played with kind voices and judgment-free smiles that are not, in fact, judgment-free. Let's talk about the seating arrangement, the silent battlefield of Sunday mornings. Families stake out pews like seasoned generals claiming territory. Some sit in the exact same spot every week, maintaining sacred seating rights passed down through generations. You sit, nod politely at everyone around you, and immediately begin the mental gymnastics of pretending to pay perfect attention. Then the service begins, soft music, warm lighting, the murmur of hymns sung at varying levels of enthusiasm. The sermon is pleasant, comforting, wise, and yet evaporates from memory almost instantly. What sticks with you instead are the sideways glances at shoes, the mental notes about haircuts, and the quiet gasp someone lets out when they see Margaret wearing pants for the first time in 20 years. Children wiggle, parents whisper negotiations under their breath, someone drops a hymnal with the force of a medieval gong. You try to sink into the calm rhythm of the service, but your brain keeps getting distracted by thoughts like, is that new perfume? Did they repaint the vestibule? Why does that choir member look like they've already lived 3 lifetimes today? And then, the potluck, the grand finale, the true reason many attend. You walk into the fellowship hall, where tables groan under the weight of casseroles, pies, ambiguous salads, and deviled eggs arranged with the precision of a military formation. People mill around, serving themselves portions larger than recommended by any medical professional. The gossip begins immediately. Did you hear about the Wilson's fence? I think Janet's hosting another Tupperware party. Margaret made her deviled eggs with paprika this time. Bold. It's wholesome, gentle, and slightly exhausting, the social equivalent of jogging in place. You smile, refill your plate, and accept compliments about your dessert even though you know full well it came from a box mix. As the event winds down, families drift toward the exit, carrying empty dishes and children who fell asleep mid-potluck. Outside, the sunlight has softened into early afternoon warmth. You walk home feeling oddly peaceful, even if your social battery is drained, your feet are sore, and someone definitely saw you spill lemonade on your shirt. Because Sunday church isn't really about theology here. It's about the ritual, the community, the spectacle of trying to appear put together in a world where no one truly is. A suburban catwalk of hope, habit, and humanity, all dressed in their Sunday best. You attend one PTA meeting and immediately understand that these parents control everything. The bake sales, the playground renovations, the emotional stability of the entire school district. Let's slip quietly into the fluorescent-lit multi-purpose room, the headquarters of this suburban shadow government. The folding chairs are arranged in perfect rows, yet the air hums with something deeper: authority, influence, and the faint smell of store-bought cookies masquerading as homemade. You take a seat near the back, hoping to remain invisible, but the PTA has already noticed you. They always notice. Their eyes, sharp, polite, assessing, track you like you've wandered into a high-level diplomatic summit wearing the wrong badge. The meeting begins with roll call, though it feels more like a census of the chosen ones. Linda, of course, is here. Every PTA has a Linda, a whirlwind of spreadsheets and whispered rumours who seems to materialise whenever decisions need to be made. There's also Karen, who speaks in a soft voice but wields terrifying power over the annual fundraising totals. And then there's Mark, the lone dad, who attends every meeting with the solemn intensity of someone who hasn't quite realised how he ended up in this role, but is too afraid to leave. The president of the PTA taps her pen against a clipboard, a sound that silences the room with military precision, and suddenly the meeting erupts into a world of acronyms you don't understand. PTO, SIP, EOY, STEM. They sling these letters like coded signals, a secret language that separates outsiders from insiders. You nod along, pretending to understand, while mentally translating everything into, yes, something important is happening. Let's talk about the power they hold. Bake sales, they run them. They control the chocolate chip cookie flow like a sugary cartel. Playground renovations, they've mapped out every slide, swing and mulch to grass ratio with frightening accuracy. Field trips, they decide where your child will go, how long they'll stay, and precisely how many juice boxes each kid may consume without causing chaos. The school district's emotional stability, firmly in their hands. And fundraising? Oh, the fundraising. A simple silent auction becomes a tactical financial operation requiring 3 subcommittees, a volunteer task force, and someone named Patricia, who claims she has a connection at a candle company but refuses to elaborate. They plan events with the seriousness of generals preparing for battle. We need $14,000 for new classroom globes, someone says, and no one questions where this oddly specific figure came from. Then comes the debate portion of the meeting, a spectacle of polite intensity. Should the fall festival have a pumpkin carving contest or a pumpkin decorating contest? The room divides sharply, alliances forming instantly. Voices rise, hands wave, data is referenced, and at one point someone pulls out a colour-coded chart labelled pumpkin-related safety concerns. You watch in awe as grown adults nearly derail a community event over the structural integrity of squash. Let's shift to the social dynamics. Every PTA meeting contains power plays simmering beneath the surface. Smiles hide rivalry. Compliments contain subtext. When someone says, "Oh, you brought brownies," what they mean is, "Interesting choice, let's see if they measure up to last year's." A simple, "Do you want to chair a committee?" is actually code for, "We are about to give you more responsibility than a senator." Eventually you get roped in. No one truly leaves a PTA meeting untouched. Someone asks if you'd like to help with something small, and suddenly you're in charge of coordinating 600 juice boxes, 38 folding tables, and a performance by the 3rd grade recorder ensemble. You accept, partly out of fear, partly out of curiosity, partly because their smiles suggest refusal is not an option. But here's the secret truth. Beneath the spreadsheets and snack schedules, the PTA is oddly wholesome. These parents, for all their dramatic intensity, care deeply about the children, the school, the teachers, the community. They build, organise, support, soothe and uplift, even while infusing everything with unnecessary levels of bureaucracy. And when the meeting finally adjourns, and the echo of decisive pen tapping fades into the night, you walk out feeling both overwhelmed and strangely inspired. Because in suburbia, the PTA isn't just a parent-teacher group, it's the quiet, quirky heartbeat of the whole neighbourhood, humming along behind the scenes, clipboard in hand, ensuring everything stays just barely on track. The mall is bright, loud, and full of stores selling things you don't need but desperately want after walking past them for 5 seconds. You leave with a pretzel, 3 bags, and mild buyer's remorse. Let's step gently into this cathedral of capitalism, the beating, fluorescent heart of suburban entertainment. The moment you walk through those glass doors, a wave of artificially chilled air hits you in the face like a refreshing corporate baptism. You gasp slightly, both from the temperature drop and from the realization that you have now entered a place where time, money, and rational decision-making cease to have meaning. The mall's soundtrack hums at a pleasant, hypnotic volume. Soft pop music from overhead speakers, children whining with unwavering commitment, and the gentle clatter of food court trays. The floors are polished to a reflective sheen, giving the illusion that you're gliding through a strangely cheerful dreamscape, where every surface gleams with possibility. Let's start with the clothing stores, endless rows of mannequins dressed in outfits that look achievable until you try them on under the harsh fitting room lighting. You flip through racks of clothing while convincing yourself this shirt, this jacket, this pair of pants will finally transform your personality. You imagine yourself as a better version of you, confident, stylish, definitely not someone who still forgets to move laundry from the washer to the dryer until 3 days later. But once you're in the dressing room, the illusion breaks. The mirror reveals a human, not an airbrushed mannequin. Still, you buy something anyway because the sales associate complimented your taste, and now you feel socially obligated. Next comes the gadget store, a treasure trove of items you never knew existed and now desperately need. Massagers shaped like alien technology, lamps that promise to cure seasonal depression through the power of aggressive brightness, headphones so advanced they practically whisper, "If you don't buy me, you don't love yourself." You handle each item with reverence, imagining how organized your life would be with just one more piece of unnecessary equipment. Let's drift into the bookstore, the quiet sanctuary where you convince yourself you're just going to browse. You run your fingers along the spines of cookbooks, crime novels, and self-help guides. You pick up a planner, even though you bought a planner last month, You make a mental note to become a person who journals, despite having failed spectacularly every other time you've tried. Still, the smell of new paper soothes you, and you buy a book you may or may not ever read simply because its cover made you feel hopeful. The food court beckons next, a paradise of questionable nutrition and heavenly aromas. You stand in line for an oversized pretzel, glazed with enough butter to temporarily improve your mood. Teenagers shout orders to one another while flipping fries with the chaotic grace of performance artists. You sit at a plastic table, chewing thoughtfully as you people watch. Every passerby is a character. The mum hauling 12 shopping bags, the teenager crying in front of the escalator for reasons unknown, the retired couple power walking like they're training for a mall-based Olympics. Then you hit the department store, a labyrinth of home goods, linens, and kitchen items that make you reconsider everything you own. You pick up a scented candle named something mysterious like whispering cedar. You don't need it, but you sniff it anyway. You consider your mortality, you buy it. As you finally leave, weighted down by purchases and sodium, the mall doors slide open, releasing you back into the daylight like a dazed creature emerging from hibernation. You blink at the sun, confused by the passage of time. It was noon when you went in. It is somehow late afternoon now. You check your bags. A sweater, a book, a kitchen tool you don't understand, a candle and a pretzel napkin. The holy relics of your suburban pilgrimage. You sigh with contentment and mild regret, but deep down you know you'll return. Because in suburbia, the mall isn't just a building, it's a ritual, a sanctuary. A glowing, echoing promise that for a few hours, at least everything you never needed is exactly what you want. The glowing box in your living room becomes the center of the household. It soothes the children, entertains the adults, and gently rewires everyone's expectations for reality. Let's step into the dim evening glow of your suburban living room. Curtains drawn, slippers on, and dinner dishes soaking in the sink as the TV hums with comforting authority. It's not just a device. It is the household's gravitational center. The room orbits it, not the other way around. You sink into the sofa, feeling the static, charged warmth of the screen wash over you like a low-voltage hug. The television doesn't judge. It doesn't ask questions. It simply beams curated fantasies directly into your eyeballs, and honestly, it feels great. Kids, especially, treat the TV like it's an omniscient deity. They sit cross-legged on the carpet, mesmerized, their little minds soaking up jingles, cartoon morals, and the subtle belief that serial mascots are trustworthy spiritual guides. The television babysits with tireless enthusiasm, far more patient than any human caretaker. It teaches shapes, colours, basic ethics, and the very American concept that problems can be solved in 22 minutes with commercials. Let's talk about those commercials. Advertisements become the cultural glue holding suburbia together. They promise blenders with impossible power, cars that glide through winding mountain roads no suburban resident will ever drive on, and toys your kids will beg for until you eventually give in. Commercials are more than marketing. They are small bursts of hypnotism disguised as entertainment. Your children suddenly crave foods shaped like cartoon characters. You suddenly believe you need a vacuum with cyclone vortex technology. Even your dog perks up at the sound of jingling leashes from pet food ads. Then there's the evening programming, the adult sanctuary. After the children are tucked into bed, you and your spouse settle into your designated TV watching positions, as if performing a nightly ritual. Sitcoms provide the laughter you were too tired to muster during the day. News broadcasts supply a gentle drip of anxiety, spiced with authoritative voices in sensible suits. Game shows reward strangers for knowing things you've forgotten since high school. Meanwhile, dramas remind you that your life, though stressful, at least doesn't involve amnesia, love triangles, and suspiciously frequent explosions. Television also becomes the ultimate suburban parenting tool. Kids fighting, turn on a nature documentary, need a moment alone, cue a cartoon marathon, dinner burning, throw on a musical variety show and let the children remain blissfully entertained while you scrape the bottom of the pan. The TV is a glowing mediator, a peacekeeper with volume control, a soothing lullaby machine in disguise. But the most surreal aspect of television is how quietly it shapes expectations. Sitcom families live in homes far larger and cleaner than yours. Commercial actors grin through meals no one actually enjoys. The news anchors speak with a confidence no real human possesses. You begin to internalize these patterns. You start imagining that normal life should include witty banter, a spotless kitchen, and hair that magically resets between scenes, and though part of you knows it's fictional, another part whispers, maybe I should try harder. Let's not forget the late-night hours, the delirious time when infomercials prowl across the screen, selling miracle knives, exercise contraptions, and tapes promising to unlock your hidden potential. You stare at the screen, half asleep, half convinced you urgently need a juicer that can liquefy a bowling ball. And yet there's comfort in all of this. Television fills the quiet. It brings the family together. It occupies the restless minds of children. It offers a break from the noise and pressure of suburban performance. When the world feels heavy, the TV clicks on with a reassuring glow that whispers, "Don't worry, just watch." Eventually someone yawns, someone stretches, someone says, "We should go to bed," but no one moves for another 5 minutes, hypnotized by the soft pull of the screen. Because in suburbia, the television isn't just entertainment, it's companionship, it's escapism, it's the warm, buzzing lullaby that gently tucks the entire household into the dream of a simpler world, one episode at a time. You wave to neighbours, water your lawn, adjust your blinds, and casually pretend your life isn't held together by casseroles and mortgage debt. It's all part of the suburban dance. Let's step into the gentle choreography of your everyday existence, a performance so well practiced you barely notice you're doing it. The sun rises, the sprinklers sputter to life, and you begin your slow transformation from a deeply exhausted human being into a fully functioning participant in the neighbourhood pageant of normalcy. You put on a nice shirt, you brush your hair, and you step outside with a smile that says everything is fine, even though the recycling bin you forgot to drag to the curb is overflowing like a symbolic metaphor. The first act of the ritual is the wave. It is not optional. You wave to neighbours whether you've spoken to them in a week, or whether the last interaction was a passive-aggressive debate about fence height. The wave must be casual yet confident, friendly yet not too eager, a delicate balance that suburbanites perfect over years of practice. You raise your hand, tilt your head, and release a smile so subtle it could be mistaken for a facial tic. They wave back, equally polished. Everyone is performing contentment, and everyone knows it. Next comes lawn maintenance, the suburban equivalent of public grooming. You water the grass like you're tending to a nervous houseplant that knows too much. You gently spray the hydrangeas that refuse to bloom. You pause every few minutes to step back and admire your work, pretending you're on a home improvement show hosted by a man named Rick, who says things like, "A tidy yard reflects a tidy soul." You nod at the thought, despite knowing your soul is currently being held together with string, duct tape, and expired coupons. Then there's the blinds. Adjusting your blinds is a form of suburban semaphore, communicating moods, habits, and emotional states without ever saying a word. Blinds open? You're approachable. Blinds closed? You're in hermit mode. Blinds half open, half closed at a dangerously precise angle. You're broadcasting, "I'm home," but also don't talk to me unless it's urgent or casserole related. You adjust them daily, sometimes hourly, because control over slats of wood feels like the only control you truly possess. Inside your home, the performance intensifies. You fluff pillows with Olympic-level precision. You tidy countertops as if a judging committee will arrive at any moment with clipboards and stern expressions. You rehearse conversations in your head before speaking them aloud. Even your walk from kitchen to living room has become a little theatrical. Shoulders back, steps light, as though demonstrating that yes, you are thriving, absolutely. Thank you for asking. But beneath this polished exterior lies the truth. Your life is a precarious balancing act. You juggle bills, appointments, school projects, emotional fatigue, and the ever-present pressure to appear like you have it all together. You smile through stress. You laugh through chaos. You casually ignore the fact that your pantry contains 7 half-eaten bags of chips and a single can of pumpkin puree you do not remember buying. Let's shift to social interactions, the pinnacle of the normalcy ritual. You chat with neighbours about safe, digestible topics, weather, lawn care, local events. You avoid deeper conversations because exposing vulnerability feels like breaking the sacred illusion. You nod sympathetically when someone mentions their laundry pile, even though your own pile is so large it may be forming sentience. You maintain eye contact that says, "We're all doing great," even though both of you quietly know you are not doing great. And yet the ritual works, somehow. The performance is oddly comforting, a gentle structure that holds your days together. Pretending to be normal becomes a way of surviving the chaos. When everyone else is pretending too, the whole neighbourhood becomes a kind of shared dream, a polite collective delusion that life is manageable and pleasant and maybe even a little charming. Because in suburbia, normalcy isn't about truth. It's about harmony, reassurance, a soft focus fantasy you reenact daily, so the world feels a little less overwhelming. And as you adjust your blinds one last time before bed, you breathe out a long, quiet sigh, perfectly normal, perfectly practiced, and let yourself drift into the peaceful illusion once again. Everyone is asleep. The streetlights hum. You stare at the ceiling wondering if this was really the dream society promised, or if you accidentally signed up for a lifetime of politely coordinated monotony. Let's slip into that late-night stillness, the version of suburbia no one talks about, yet everyone knows intimately. The dishes are done, the lights are off, the kids have finally stopped asking questions about the nature of clouds, the dog has curled into a loaf-shaped lump at the foot of the bed, and yet you remain awake, blinking at the darkness like it contains answers you forgot to write down. This is the hour when your brain decides to run its strangest programming. All day long you've performed the suburban routine, mowing, waving, smiling, budgeting, casseroling, but at 10 p.m. the performance ends, the curtain falls, the house quiets, and your thoughts wander into uncharted territory. You begin to question everything in gentle, sleepy spirals. Was this really the American dream? Or did you accidentally wander into some kind of pastel-coloured simulation where everyone is too polite to acknowledge the existential void? Your ceiling becomes a blank canvas for late-night revelations. You lie there replaying random moments of the day with absurd scrutiny. The handshake with your neighbour, the joke you made at the grocery store that no one laughed at. The fact that you bought a scented candle called Fresh Linen Dreams, even though you already own 3 identical candles. You wonder if everyone else in the neighbourhood is also lying awake now, staring into their own ceilings, thinking, is this it? Is this everything? Let's talk about the streetlights. Their steady hum is oddly soothing. A suburban lullaby provided by the municipal government. The warm orange glow spills softly through your blinds, creating strange geometric patterns on the carpet. They remind you of childhood, of long car rides home, of passing rows of sleepy houses and imagining the lives inside them. Back then, suburbia felt magical. Now it feels curated, symmetrical, slightly suspicious in its tidiness. Your mind drifts to the bigger questions, the ones that only sneak out after dark. You think about your mortgage, your job, your future. You think about how strange it is that you spend most of your days pretending you have everything under control when, in reality, you're improvising at the same level as everyone else. You wonder if your parents felt this way, staring at ceilings decades ago, whispering the same quiet worries into the dark. Let's not forget the late-night kitchen visit, the unofficial second act of existential pondering. You tiptoe through the house like a ghost with snack cravings. You open the fridge and stare at its contents as though the milk carton might whisper life advice. Instead, you settle for a cold leftover something, maybe pasta, maybe casserole, maybe a questionable Jell-O situation. You lean against the counter, spoon in hand, while contemplating the fragility of dreams and the durability of Tupperware. Outside, the neighbourhood rests beneath a blanket of perfect silence. All the lawns you compulsively maintained, all the fences you compared to the Joneses, all the driveways lined with station wagons. During the day, these things felt important. Tonight, they feel tiny, almost cute, like props on a stage where everyone is trying to remember their lines. And yet there's a strange comfort in this quiet desperation, a soft honesty, a moment where the polished veneer of suburban life slips just enough to reveal a universal truth. No one actually knows what they're doing. Not your neighbours, not the HOA, not Carl, not the mysteriously omniscient milkman. Everyone is faking certainty, performing stability, hoping no one notices the cracks that look suspiciously like your own. Eventually, exhaustion settles over you like a warm quilt. You wander back to bed. The ceiling is still there, patient and blank. You breathe deeply, slowly, The hum of the streetlights becomes a lullaby again, and as your eyes finally close, you think, maybe tomorrow I'll feel certain again, or maybe certainty is overrated. Either way, morning will come, the performance will begin, and you'll be ready enough. The snow melts, the flowers bloom, and you suddenly believe you might escape the crushing sameness of suburbia. Then the HOA sends a reminder about lawn height regulations and reality returns. Let's ease into that first true spring morning, the one where sunlight pours through your window at a forgiving angle, warm but not arrogant. The air smells like thawed earth, damp mulch, and possibility. For the first time in months, you peel yourself out of bed without resenting the universe. You step outside, arms stretched, lungs full, spirits rising with the promise of renewal. Birds are chirping. The squirrels look slightly less dead inside. Even your mailbox seems to greet you with optimism. Spring has arrived, and with it, the dangerous, intoxicating belief that life is about to get better. You begin imagining dramatic personal transformations. You'll get into gardening again, real gardening. Not the frantic weed pulling you performed last summer at midnight. You'll start jogging, you'll redecorate, you'll become someone who owns matching patio furniture. The world feels fresh, alive, open. Hope blooms alongside the tulips, and that's exactly when it happens. The first email from the HOA friendly reminder, lawn height regulations begin April 1st. Nothing kills joy faster than a reminder that your grass must remain between 2.5 and 3.75 inches at all times, as if your lawn is enrolled in a private boarding school with a strict dress code. You stare at the message, feeling the warmth of spring drain from your body like someone pulled a plug in your soul. The universe had offered you freedom. The HOA offered you a measuring stick. But you try to stay positive. After all, spring is still spring. Let's talk about your yard. The snow has melted, revealing patches of brown grass, some lost toys, and something that might be a fossilized Halloween decoration. You kneel down, touch the soil, and imagine nurturing it back to life. Rich, green, thriving. The warm sun kisses your cheeks. Your heart stirs. The grass rustles. Then you notice Carl, the HOA president, watching from across the street. He's holding a clipboard. He's assessing. You casually stand up, pretending you weren't about to plant unapproved species of hydrangeas. You wave. He waves back with the polite intensity of a man who has memorized Section 4B of the Suburban Code of Conduct. Your hope wavers, but you push on. You buy colourful flowers at the garden centre, petunias, pansies, daisies with names that sound like characters from Victorian novels. You place them lovingly in your flower beds. You dig your hands into the soil, feeling grounded, alive, renewed. Then you hear it. Him. It's Linda, the neighbour who knows everything about everyone and believes gardening is a competitive sport. She leans over the fence, eyebrows raised, ready to offer advice you definitely did not request. Those need partial shade, she says, and don't overwater, and don't underwater, and the HOA prefers perennials. And are you sure those colours match your house's energy? Your soul leaves your body briefly. Still, you persist. You take walks again, because spring always tricks you into thinking walking is enjoyable. The breeze is gentle, kids ride bikes. The ice cream truck returns like a sugar-coated omen of joy. For a few fleeting days, suburbia feels vibrant, hopeful, almost whimsical. Then pollen arrives, a thick, yellow reminder that nature does not care about your aspirations. Your eyes water, your throat itches, your car becomes a golden dust sculpture. You sneeze with such force that the dog reevaluates its relationship with you. And yet spring keeps pulling you back into optimism. The world reblooms, the days stretch longer. You linger on the porch in the evenings, watching fireflies blink awake like tiny lanterns. Then, like clockwork, another HOA notice arrives. Reminder, spring fence inspection begins Monday. And just like that, hope gently collapses back into resignation. But maybe, just maybe, that cycle of hope, disappointment, and renewed hope is the real magic of spring in suburbia. Every year it promises escape. Every year it delivers regulations, and still, inevitably you'll believe again next April. Because hope, like dandelions, always manages to push through the cracks. The sun sets, grills ignite, and suddenly the entire neighbourhood materialises on your street carrying folding chairs and questionable potato salads. You're handed a paper plate before you've even said hello, and now you must mingle politely with people you've only ever waved to from 30 feet away. The music is slightly too loud, the burger's slightly too undercooked, and yet everyone insists on calling this community building. Let's step into this yearly ritual, this suburban migration pattern, where neighbours who normally communicate only through half smiles and lawn-based competitiveness now gather in the street like participants in a temporary festival of forced cheer. The moment the first car is moved to make space, you feel a shift in the air as though the entire neighbourhood has been summoned by an ancient HOA decree reading. Thou shalt socialise whether thou wantst to or not. You arrive carrying a side dish you made 3 hours ago and began regretting 3 seconds after placing it on the communal table. That table, by the way, is a buffet of culinary uncertainty. Pasta salads sweating under the sun, desserts vaguely shaped like emotions, mystery casseroles emitting social pressure in steam form. There is always one dish that looks store-bought, but whose owner insists it's homemade from scratch, even though the plastic Safeway container is clearly visible under the foil. You try to find a place to stand, but every social cluster is already in motion. There's the Grill Dad Coalition, a group of fathers wearing matching cargo shorts, gripping tongs as if they're ancient relics of masculine power. They hover around the grill debating charcoal temperatures with the seriousness of wartime strategists. Someone flips burgers too early. Someone else mutters about propane purity. You back away slowly, sensing territorial energy. Next is the mum circle, where women exchange stories at a speed the human ear was not designed to process. PTA politics, school drama, casserole critiques, all delivered with supportive smiles and hidden emotional knives. You nod politely when they look your way, praying you're not invited to join a committee. Children run wild, forming packs that chase each other through sprinkler mist and under picnic tables. Their faces are streaked with popsicle juice and the unmistakable joy of being allowed to roam with minimal supervision. They occasionally return to grab a fistful of chips or report a minor injury. Band-aids are dispensed like candy. Then there's the music guy. Every block party has one. He brings an oversized speaker, 3 extension cords, and the unwavering belief that everyone loves his playlist. He cycles through hits from the past 4 decades, creating a sonic experience best described as wedding reception but with higher stakes. The volume is always just loud enough to make conversation difficult and awkward, forcing everyone to lean in uncomfortably close to ask things like, "Did you bring the coleslaw?" Or "Is that Linda's husband or her sister's cousin's neighbour?" You try mingling, you attempt small talk, you make polite remarks about the weather and the new mailbox regulations. At some point, Carl from the EOA approaches, clipboard in hand, and you mentally prepare for your nightly performance of pretending not to fear Carl. He asks how your lawn is doing, a question loaded with unspoken judgment. You assure him it's fine. He nods the nod of a man who has inspected your yard from afar and knows otherwise. Then comes the awkward moment when someone suggests group photos. A collective groan passes through the crowd, but everyone complies because resisting is futile. You stand shoulder to shoulder with neighbours you couldn't pick out of a lineup, smiling with your mouth while your eyes silently beg for escape. As darkness deepens, fireflies flicker, drinks flow, and conversations soften. The tension eases just a bit. You find yourself enjoying the faint breeze, the sound of kids laughing, the pleasant absurdity of adults discussing grill marks as if they were prophetic signs. Maybe, just for a moment, you even feel connected, a tiny spark of community glowing beneath the surface of suburban performance. And then, someone suggests karaoke. That's when you gather your things, thank 3 different people for hosting, even though no one actually hosted, and quietly slip back home. Because block parties are fun, but only in the exact amount of time it takes for the potato salad to reach room temperature. After that, you've fulfilled your civic duty. Your house features a large front window designed for natural light, but what it really does is turn your living room into a public aquarium exhibit. Every evening, neighbours casually stroll by, peering in as if expecting to see a family of rare suburban dolphins. You try to act normal while eating dinner, keenly aware that your every move feels like part of a silent performance called "Please Don't Judge Our Couch Pillows." Let's gently step into your living room, that cosy, carefully curated space you once believed belonged to you. During the day, the picture window seems innocent, cheerful even. Sunlight pours in, warming the carpet, illuminating dust particles that dance like tiny ghosts of undone chores. The plants thrive, The dog lounges, you sip coffee and think, how lovely, how bright, how refreshing. But when evening arrives, the window becomes something else entirely. As soon as the outside darkens and your lamps turn on, your living room transforms into a glowing diorama titled Suburban Family at Rest. You become the main attraction in a display case for the entire neighbourhood. People passing by slow down, glancing inside with the casual curiosity of museum visitors reading placards. Some neighbours pretend they aren't looking. They stare straight ahead, then perform a subtle side-eye glance that fools no one. Others boldly peer in, waving cheerfully while you freeze mid-chew like an animal encountering a wildlife photographer. Teenagers on bicycles ride past slowly, as though waiting for something dramatic to happen, perhaps hoping someone drops a casserole. Children press their noses to the glass from outside, leaving smudges shaped like existential dread. Dogs drag their owners across your lawn because they want a better sniff. Even the mailman walking by after his shift gives the window a polite nod, as if acknowledging the unspoken rule. Privacy ends where the glare begins. Let's talk about what the window does to your behaviour. Before sitting down to dinner, you find yourself adjusting your posture. You angle your body so your good side faces the street, despite having no evidence that you possess a good side. You arrange the throw pillows with the precision of a retail display artist. You hide messy mail under magazines. You place the fruit bowl in a position that subtly suggests health and stability, even though the bananas are weeks past their expiration date. Eating becomes a delicate ritual. You take small, dignified bites, as though auditioning for a low-budget cooking show. You laugh at jokes more gently, mindful of your silhouette. You pretend your family never argues about the thermostat or who forgot to buy milk. Everything feels choreographed, each movement part of a silent ballet titled, "We are doing fine, thank you. Let's shift to the blinds," your only weapon in the battle for privacy. You try lowering them just enough to block the outside world, but not so much that the neighbours think you're hiding something scandalous or illegal, like mismatched dinner plates. Yet blinds come with their own psychology. Too closed, and you appear antisocial. Too open, and you might as well charge admission. You spend an embarrassing amount of time adjusting slats to achieve the right balance of approachable but not observable. Eventually, your paranoia grows. You start imagining your neighbours discussing your living room like critics reviewing an avant-garde play. Did you see their new rug? Bold choice. They use a lot of throw blankets. Maybe they're going through something. You begin strategizing routes through the living room that avoid the direct line of sight from the street. You crouch past the window when carrying laundry. You turn off lights to watch TV in the dark like a raccoon with a streaming subscription. You start Googling tasteful curtains at midnight, and yet despite the discomfort, there's something oddly endearing about this suburban fishbowl existence. Everyone is watching everyone, not out of malice, but curiosity, connection, a peculiar form of communal voyeurism where judgment is mild, fleeting, and usually overshadowed by someone's questionable lawn ornament. In the end, you close the blinds halfway, sink into the couch, and accept your fate as both homeowner and unwilling neighbourhood exhibit. Because in suburbia, privacy may vanish, but at least the lighting is flattering. Your house is a Cold War battlefield divided between those who want Arctic temperatures and those who prefer tropical humidity. Every adjustment sparks a domestic negotiation worthy of Geneva. You sneak over to nudge the dial when no one's looking, only to find someone else has changed it back moments later. In suburbia, thermostats aren't appliances, they're power struggles with LED screens. Let's step into this climate-controlled war zone, a place where comfort is subjective, diplomacy is fragile, and betrayal occurs quietly in socked feet at 3 a.m. It begins innocently enough. One person in the home feels a little warm, another feels a bit chilly. These statements sound harmless, but in suburban terms, they are acts of aggression. The thermostat becomes a glowing beacon of possibility and danger, humming softly on the wall like a tiny digital tyrant deciding everyone's fate. You, for example, prefer reasonable temperatures, the kind that don't frost your eyelashes or liquefy your internal organs. But your family? They adhere to wildly different philosophies. Someone sets the thermostat to degrees because they sleep better when it's crisp. Someone else raises it to 78 because they like feeling hugged by the air. These are irreconcilable differences. Diplomatic efforts continue, but peace is never truly achieved. The battle unfolds in waves. A gentle beep from the thermostat signals an adjustment. You wait 5 minutes. Another beep. Someone is counter-adjusting. You narrow your eyes, mentally calculating who is awake and plotting sabotage. This negotiation, repeated dozens of times a day, forms the thermal heartbeat of your household. Steady, rhythmic, slightly hostile. You embark on covert missions. You tiptoe down the hallway like a climate-controlled ninja, glancing over your shoulder for witnesses. You press the button with surgical precision. 70 degrees. Perfect. Balanced. Harmonious. You walk away with the satisfaction of a ruler who has restored order. But no victory lasts. Moments later, you pass by and notice the LED display has changed again. Not slightly, dramatically. Someone has raised it to 75. Someone else drops it to 68. The thermostat is now less a temperature controller and more an emotional battlefield disguised as hardware. Let's talk about the arguments. They're always the same, recurring conversations held in gentle suburban tones that mask the seething chaos beneath. It's freezing in here. No, it's comfortable. It feels like a sauna. It feels like a refrigerator. Why are you wearing socks and a sweater inside your own home? Because you won't let me control my destiny. These debates echo through the house with the intensity of international politics, but expressed in polite, slightly passive-aggressive phrasing typical of families who share casserole recipes. Blankets become political symbols, slippers become resistance gear, space heaters are contraband, fans are weapons deployed in the night. You try to compromise, setting the thermostat somewhere in the middle, but middle ground is an illusion. Someone is always suffering. Someone is always sweating. Someone is always 1 degree away from staging a coup. Pets choose sides. The cat lies directly on top of the vent, claiming it as sovereign territory. The dog wanders from room to room, seeking the warmest patch of carpet. Children adapt faster than adults. 1 minute wrapped in blankets like burritos, the next minute stripping down because it suddenly got hot. Their temperature flexibility both impresses you and fuels your resentment. And then there's the seasonal escalation. Summer brings air conditioning warfare. Winter ushers in heating diplomacy. Every shift of the weather reignites ancient tensions. The thermostat becomes a symbol of hope, control, and the illusion that comfort can be universally achieved in a shared space. But beneath all the frustration, all the whispered sneaking and quiet button pushing, there's something strangely tender about it. Everyone just wants to feel okay, safe, calm, warm, or cool enough to fall asleep without resentment. The thermostat is merely the conduit for that longing. In the end, you compromise again. You set it to 71 degrees, a number that offends everyone just enough to be considered neutral. You walk away, victorious for now, but you know, deep down you'll hear that beep again soon. Because in suburbia, temperature isn't just a setting, it's identity. It's territory. It's the quiet domestic war that never truly ends and somehow makes home feel like home. There is always one dog, one fluffy tyrant, who roams the neighbourhood with godlike confidence. He knows which houses give out treats, which fences are poorly latched, and exactly when the mailman arrives so he can perform his daily intimidation ritual. Somehow he belongs to no one and everyone simultaneously, a four-legged diplomat of chaos keeping suburbia humble. Let's take a slow walk into his kingdom, the sidewalks, lawns, porches and driveways that form his personal empire. He trots with the relaxed swagger of a creature who fears absolutely nothing. The squirrels scurry out of his way, the birds flutter nervously overhead, even the wind seems to shift direction to avoid inconveniencing him. His tail wags gently but with intention, like a flag signalling dominance over all he surveys. Every neighbourhood has this dog. He's not quite a stray, everyone swears he has an owner, though the details are vague, contradictory or suspiciously mystical. Some say he belongs to the Wilsons, others insist he is the long-lost pet of a family who moved away a decade ago but left him behind to guard the block. Children believe he materialised from the woods one day. Adults shrug and offer him snacks. The truth is irrelevant. What matters is that he knows he's in charge. Let's talk about his daily rounds. He begins each morning with a patrol, a leisurely inspection of trash cans, flower beds, fences, and any suspicious lawn ornaments that may have appeared overnight. He sniffs everything with the expertise of a seasoned detective and the judgment of a Victorian critic. If something is off, a misplaced garden gnome, a new propane tank, a decorative wreath that smells too strongly of cinnamon. He leaves a message in the form of a solemn bark. Then comes the treat circuit. He knows exactly which households provide the good stuff. Old Mrs. Henderson offers biscuits shaped like bones. The family on Birchwood Court hands out leftover rotisserie chicken. Your own spouse keeps a secret stash of dog treats in the junk drawer, though they deny it fiercely. The dog stops by each home in turn, sitting politely at the doorstep and staring at the doorbell with the focused intensity of a Buddhist monk. It works every time. No one resists him. Resistance would be futile. But his true moment of glory arrives when the mailman turns onto the street. The dog's ears perk. His tail stiffens. His stance lowers like a soldier preparing for battle. He struts directly into the mailman's path. A showdown ensues. The mailman hesitates. The dog huffs. The world briefly pauses. Then, satisfied with the tension he has created, the dog allows the mailman to pass, but only after demonstrating who truly controls the neighbourhood's emotional climate. Let's not forget his diplomatic duties. He mediates children's arguments by wandering directly through the middle of their games, forcing them to stop and pet him. He supervises barbecues by positioning himself under the grill, ensuring no dropped hamburger goes to waste. He accompanies joggers like a personal trainer, with fur and questionable cardio stamina. He attends block parties, wedding receptions, garage sales, and any gathering involving potato salad. He is, without question, the social backbone of the neighbourhood. And like any great leader, he has secrets. No one knows where he sleeps. No one knows how he stays so clean despite rolling in every patch of dirt available. No one knows why he sometimes stares into the distance as if receiving messages from an unseen council of ancient dogs. Occasionally, someone tries to put a collar on him. He accepts it for a day, then returns the next morning without explanation. Collar gone, eyes sparkling with mischief. You can't help admiring him. He lives freely, peacefully, joyfully, a furry reminder that suburban rules, schedules, and anxieties are human inventions, easily ignored by those with enough confidence and enough fluff. Sometimes, when he pauses on your porch and looks up at you with those warm, knowing eyes, you feel a strange sense of reassurance. Because in a world filled with mortgages, PTA meetings, and HOA regulations, it's comforting to know that someone, even a dog, has achieved true emotional liberation. He may not pay property taxes, he may not respect fences, he may scandalise Carl from the HOA on a weekly basis, but he keeps the neighbourhood grounded, connected, laughing, human. Every suburb needs its ruler. Yours just happens to have 4 paws and boundless audacity. Your basement is less a storage area and more a graveyard of abandoned aspirations. There's the treadmill you swore you'd use, the guitar you strummed twice, the pottery kit that produced one lopsided bowl before you surrendered. The space hums softly, with the echoes of motivations long extinguished. Yet you keep everything, because someday, maybe, you'll take up woodworking again. Let's take a careful step down those creaking basement stairs, one hand on the railing, the other clutching the quiet shame of too many failed self-improvement attempts. The air down here is cool, slightly damp, and carries the faint smell of cardboard, the universal scent of adulthood. A single light bulb dangles from the ceiling like a weary star, illuminating the sprawling archaeological site of your unused ambitions. First, we encounter the treadmill, a hulking monument to optimism. It sits in the corner, draped in laundry you swore you wouldn't put there, but absolutely did. When you bought it, you envisioned yourself, jogging gracefully in coordinated athletic wear, glowing with health and discipline. Instead, the treadmill now serves as an expensive, motorized clothing rack. Dust gathers on the screen. The safety clip dangles like a sad little pendulum, and yet you cannot get rid of it. Because someday, not today, but someday, you might rediscover your inner athlete. Next, the guitar. A beautiful instrument, slightly out of tune, leaning against a wall like a lonely troubadour waiting to be loved again. You remember the day you brought it home. You felt the fire of creativity burning within you. You imagined serenading friends, learning chords effortlessly, unlocking your hidden potential. But the reality was finger pain, buzzing strings, and the crushing realization that playing an F chord requires supernatural flexibility. Now the guitar sits silently, still hopeful, still judgmental. Across the room, lies the pottery kit, bowls, tools, half-full glaze jars, and a single completed piece, the infamous lopsided bowl. Not functional, not aesthetically pleasing, not structurally sound. It wobbles gently on the shelf like it's too ashamed to stand still. But you keep it because it represents effort. A brief, fragile attempt at becoming the kind of person who throws clay on weekends. Every suburb has at least one such bowl, the pottery equivalent of participation trophies. Let's wander deeper. You pass the woodworking bench cluttered with tools you bought during a phase of extreme confidence. You imagined crafting heirloom furniture. Instead, you built a shelf that collapsed within minutes, and you quietly retreated from the hobby before anyone could ask you to fix something. The bench now serves as a resting place for paint cans, half-empty varnish jars, and a wood plane that has never once touched wood. Nearby, a collection of fitness accessories sits in a box labelled miscellaneous. Hand weights, resistance bands, a jump rope with handles so squeaky it sounds like emotional distress. You used each item exactly once, possibly twice, before tucking them lovingly away, promising yourself you'd return once life was less chaotic, which is to say, never. Let's not forget the puzzles, board games, scrapbooking materials, knitting supplies, and the inexplicable fondue set. Each one represents a different version of you, a person who believed, however briefly, that hobbies were pathways to fulfillment rather than temporary detours into disappointment. And yet the basement is not sad. Not really. It's strangely tender, an archive of all the ways you've tried, a museum of good intentions, a soft reminder that the desire to grow, experiment and reinvent yourself is a beautiful thing, even if follow-through is not your strongest skill. Because hope lives down here, quietly. Every forgotten hobby whispers, maybe someday, and someday might never come, but the possibility comforts you. So you leave the basement, turn off the single dangling bulb and climb the stairs back into your life. The projects remain in the shadows, patient and forgiving, humming faintly with unfinished dreams. Because in suburbia, the basement isn't a storage space. It's a sanctuary of potential, a place where every version of you still waits, just in case tomorrow is the day you finally pick up that guitar again. So tonight, as you drift beneath your blankets, let your mind settle from the whirlwind of perfectly clipped lawns, casserole diplomacy, and the eternal battle with Carl from the HOA. You've survived a full day in the American suburbs of the 1950s, a world painted as paradise, yet stitched together with quiet pressure, anxious smiles, casserole dishes, and carefully ironed expectations. And somehow, through all the conformity, the competition, and the endless chorus of lawnmowers humming like suburban cicadas, people kept going. They found joy where they could, in backyard barbecues, in block party laughter, in the glow of the first television set flickering through the living room like a tiny electric miracle. They made do with what they had, even when what they had was stress disguised as Tupperware. When you think about it, there's something deeply human and deeply funny about the way people try to build a perfect life with matching houses, matching routines and matching anxieties. They didn't have the words for burnout or the freedom to question everything loudly, so they just quietly endured, tended their lawns, pressed their slacks, and hoped the milkman wouldn't judge them too hard. And yet there's a kind of resilience in that, a gentle stubbornness, a hopeful insistence that life can be good if you keep showing up for it, even when it's weird, exhausting, or covered in pastel paint. So as you settle into sleep tonight, maybe give yourself permission to let go of a few expectations, the ones that never really mattered anyway. Be grateful for your imperfect home, your imperfect routines, your imperfect freedom. Be grateful for the little rebellions suburbia never allowed, for mismatched houses, mismatched families, mismatched lives, for the fact that your lawn can grow wild and no one will fine you $30 for it. Let your breath soften. Let your thoughts drift like porch lights turning off one by one across a quiet neighborhood, and feel the simple comfort of being exactly where you are, without needing to perform or perfect anything. Because history, whether medieval or suburban, is proof that people are stubborn, hopeful, and endlessly ridiculous. And you, lucky you,